So, what if the exact struggles that you've overcome in your life, whether that's, fixing your marriage or finally losing that stubborn weight, or even just figuring out the weird, obscure mechanics of a backyard hobby, what if that is actually the exact blueprint that someone else is desperately waiting to pay you for?
Right.
I mean, what if you're already an expert and the only missing piece of the puzzle is a system to share it?
It completely reframes how we look at our own history, doesn't it? I
Hmm.
mean, we have this tendency to view our past hurdles as just that annoying hurdles that we are, frankly, incredibly glad to have left behind in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, exactly.
We just don't realize that the mud we crawl through, the very specific, painful ways we learn to jump over those hurdles, all of that holds immense calculable value for the people who are currently staring up at that exact same wall.
And they're completely stuck.
Right, completely stuck.
Well, that reframing is exactly what we're getting into today. Welcome to the deep dive. We have compiled a massive stack of research, case studies, and these foundational blueprints that are all focused on the mechanics of building an expert-based business.
It's a huge topic.
It really is. Our mission today is to figure out how you can transform your specialized, hard-won knowledge into a mass movement. We're going to look at why mastering the flow of information is the ultimate tool for any modern entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
And, how stepping into the role of a charismatic leader is basically the shortcut to both immense impact and, frankly, wealth.
And we really need to start this exploration with a fascinating economic framework. If we look at the insights gathered in our research, specifically pulling from the foundational models popularized by financial educators, like Robert Kiyosaki, we have to start by looking at the cash flow quadrant.
Right, the cash flow quadrant.
Yeah, because it perfectly sets the stage for why an information-based business is so completely unique in the entire history of commerce.
I am so glad we're starting here because I've always found that transition from, just a person who knows a thing to a person running an actual business to be incredibly daunting.
Oh, it's terrifying for most people.
Exactly. So break down this quadrant for us. Why is it the key to understanding this entire landscape?
So the quadrant divides the working world into 4 distinct categories. On the left side, you have the E, which stands for employee, and right below that, you have the S for self-employed.
Okay, E and S.
Now, the vast majority of the population, they start in that E quadrant. You get a job, you get a paycheck, it's safe. But some people get the entrepreneurial itch, right? They want more control, so they transition down to the S quadrant.
They become self-employed.
Exactly. They open a freelance graphic design shop or maybe a local bakery or, a consulting practice.
But the trap there, and this is something we see all the time, is that you haven't actually built a business. You essentially just created a job for yourself.
Right. You own a job.
Because you are still trading your time directly for money. Like, if the baker doesn't literally wake up and bake the bread that morning, the baker doesn't get paid.
Precisely. True financial freedom, the kind that actually scales without destroying your physical and mental health in the process, that happens when you cross over to the right side of the quadrant.
Promised land.
Exactly. That's the B for business owner, where you build systems and hire people that work for you. And then below that, the I for investor, where your money actually works for you.
Okay, but crossing that chasm from the left side to the right side, moving from just being self-employed to being a true business owner, historically, that has been an absolute bloodbath.
Oh yeah, the failure rate is staggering.
You're talking about incredible technical barriers, massive financial risk.
Historically, yes.
Mm.
To build a true B quadrant business,
Mm.
you usually needed venture capital, massive bank loans, a huge physical footprint, inventory.
And a whole team of engineers or managers, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was expensive, it was risky, and it was incredibly time-consuming. But, and this is where it gets exciting, the research we're analyzing today points out a fundamental shift in the modern landscape. The great equalizer today is information.
Information.
Yes, information is the ultimate bridge to the B quadrant.
Okay, I have to push back a little here, though. Information is the equalizer. What about capital? I mean, you still need money to build systems, don't you?
Well, not in the way you used to. We are talking about information that is already inside your head right now.
Okay.
When you pair your specialized knowledge with modern software tools that entirely remove the old technical barriers, you can spin up a global storefront, automate delivery, and process payments without writing a single line of code.
So the tech essentially replaces the need for a massive team.
Exactly. You can transition into that business owner quadrant almost seamlessly with essentially zero startup capital. The product is just your experience.
That makes sense logically. But what I find really fascinating in the notes we gathered is the psychological shift required to actually do that.
It's a huge mindset shift.
Yeah, there's a profound point here about hitting a ceiling in your own personal development. Like, we all start out on this journey of personal growth, right?
Yeah,
You get excited about a topic. Let's say it's dog training.
good example.
You start geeking out, you read the books, you watch all the YouTube videos, you consume absolutely all the information you can get your hands on.
Yes, you become the ultimate student. You are a sponge, and you're applying it all to your own life, to your own dog.
But eventually you hit a wall. Reading the 51st book on dog training just isn't going to make you any better at training your dog.
Right, you've consumed all there is to consume.
It's almost like playing a video game. You spend the whole game grinding, leveling up your character, finding the best armor, fighting the bosses, but eventually you hit the level cap. And the game stops being fun if you just keep running around in circles in the same areas. The only way to unlock the end game content, so to speak, is to shift your perspective. You have to become the guide for the new players who are just spawning into the map.
I love that analogy because it highlights a universal truth about human fulfillment. True growth, ultimately, it comes from contribution.
Contribution.
When you shift your focus from hoarding knowledge to helping others achieve what you have already achieved, you actually end up learning entirely new dimensions of your own process.
Oh, that makes sense, because you have to explain it.
Exactly. It forces you to deconstruct your own success so you can teach it. You stop asking, how do I get better?
Yeah.
You start asking, how did I do this? And how can I replicate it for someone else?
Let's look at Kiyosaki himself as an example from our case studies. Because the Rich Dad Company, it didn't start as this massive, intimidating global financial education empire.
Not at all. It started incredibly simply. It began with a physical board game called Cash Flow.
Just a board game.
Just a game. The entire goal was simply to teach a specific financial lesson through play. But because that game provided a tangible transformation, a literal shift in how the players understood money and investing, it sparked a fire.
Wow.
It grew organically into local lectures, which then grew into a book, which then grew into a massive coaching platform.
So there wasn't some grand 50-page business plan on day one to build an empire.
No, absolutely not. It was simply a transition from knowing a valuable lesson to deciding to teach that lesson to others.
So for you listening right now, the immediate takeaway is to audit your own life. You need to identify the specific areas where you have transitioned from learning to applying.
Yes, look at your own journey.
Think about what you know deeply. Think about the topics where your friends naturally come to you for advice. That transition zone where you've already solved a painful problem for yourself, that is exactly where your future expert business lives.
Now, I know the immediate objection a lot of people have here.
The imposter syndrome.
Exactly. The word expert carries a ton of academic baggage. People think, well, I don't have a PhD, I don't have a best-selling book, so who am I to call myself an expert?
Right. They think, I just figured out how to get my toddler to sleep through the night. I'm not a pediatrician.
Exactly.
Right.
But the case studies we're looking at, they completely shatter that illusion. In fact, one of the most famous origin stories in this entire space is what is often called the potato gun epiphany.
Oh, this is hands down my favorite story. From all the research we pulled, it perfectly demystifies the whole concept. Set the scene for us.
It really strips away all the intimidation. So the story goes back to an entrepreneur who was a sophomore in college. He's married, he's completely broke, he's wrestling on the college team, and he is stuck at home in Idaho during spring break while all of his friends drove down to Vegas to party.
Miserable. He's sitting in his cheap apartment, desperate to figure out how to make money online.
Right. And he's failing at selling random junk on eBay. He's failing at affiliate marketing, just striking out left and right.
And on the third day of spring break, out of pure agonizing boredom, he and a friend decide they want to build a potato gun.
Just a random, nostalgic project to get off the couch.
But here's where the friction happens. They don't actually know how to make one. And back then, when they searched online, the information was terrible.
It was completely fragmented.
Yeah, the free plans they downloaded just didn't work. They'd go to the hardware store, buy the PVC pipes, and find out the ratios were totally wrong. The pieces didn't even fit together.
So they spend the entire weekend locked in this state of trial and error. They're going back and forth to the hardware store, blowing things up, tweaking the exact pipe ratios, figuring out the right barbecue igniter to use.
Discovering which specific brand of hairspray creates the best combustion.
Exactly. And by Sunday night, they had built a functioning absolute cannon of a potato gun.
But here is the profound part of the story. Without even realizing it, over that single weekend, they had become experts.
Yes, they had acquired highly specialized knowledge through their own struggle, their own wasted money, and their own experimentation.
And they realized that there were thousands of other people out there just like them, searching the internet, actively looking for that exact information.
They didn't start out wanting to be global potato gun gurus. They were just trying to solve a personal curiosity. But they took that weekend of trial and error, they filmed themselves making it, created a simple guide, and started selling it.
And people bought it.
People bought it. That completely redefines expertise. Expertise isn't necessarily a credential on a wall in a fancy frame. It's simply having the map through a minefield that someone else is currently trying to cross.
That realization is the foundation for the two distinct types of expert businesses that we see in the market today. Type 1 is the model we just described. It is the most direct path, selling information products directly.
This is taking the potato gun blueprints, or the toddler sleep schedule, or the marathon training plan, and packaging them into courses, coaching, or consulting.
Exactly. It's the ultimate lean startup. You have zero inventory, zero shipping costs, and practically infinite scale.
You don't need venture capital. You just need a deep passion for what you're teaching and the ability to articulate the journey so others can follow it.
Okay, so type 1 makes perfect sense. But type 2 is where I think this gets really wild, especially for people who already own traditional brick-and-mortar businesses.
Yes, this is a game changer.
The research talks about leveraging information products to grow an existing physical or service-based business. And I really want to stop and unpack this because at first glance, it feels like a mismatch.
It does.
So let's say I'm a dentist. How does a dentist use this? How does a dentist build a potato gun, metaphorically speaking?
It's a brilliant question. Because you're right, a dentist sells a physical, highly regulated service. They drill teeth. They don't sell PDFs. But we have to ask, what is the specialized knowledge that a dentist possesses that their everyday patients find completely baffling?
Well, the intricacies of dental hygiene, preventative care, the actual science behind cavities, or, the truth about whether those whitening strips actually destroy your enamel.
Exactly. Right now, that dentist is relying on people waking up with a toothache and Googling dentist near me.
Right. Highly reactive.
They are competing on proximity and maybe price. It's a race to the bottom. But what if that dentist takes their specialized knowledge and packages it into a front-end information product? Let's say they create a short, high-quality video series or an inexpensive book called The Sugar Conspiracy, How to Keep Your Kids Out of the Dentist's Chair Forever.
Oh, I see where this is going.
The dentist runs local ads, offering this information product for a few dollars, or even for free if the customer just covers the shipping of the physical book. Suddenly, they aren't advertising a teeth cleaning, they are advertising highly valuable, specialized information.
And as a parent, I would absolutely click on that. I mean, I'm terrified of my kids getting cavities, so I get the book.
You read the book, and while you are learning this fascinating information about pediatric dental care, what else is happening to you psychologically?
I am being completely indoctrinated to view this specific dentist as the ultimate authority.
Yes.
They aren't just a local tooth mechanic anymore. They are the expert who wrote the literal book on keeping my kids healthy.
Exactly. By attaching an information business to the front end of their physical business, they completely change the relationship. When your kid inevitably needs a checkup or needs braces, who are you going to call? The random clinic on the corner or the expert who already provided you with immense value?
I'm calling the expert every single time.
And here's the financial genius of the Type 2 model. Because the dentist charged a few dollars for that initial information product, the revenue from the book sales actually pays for the advertising costs.
Wow.
They are acquiring highly qualified, indoctrinated patients for essentially $0. In some cases, they are literally getting paid to acquire a customer who will then go on to spend thousands of dollars on their core service.
That is mind-blowing. It completely flips traditional marketing on its head.
We saw this same dynamic in the tech sector case studies, didn't we? Particularly with software companies.
We did.
There's a famous funnel-building software company that became the fastest-growing non-VC-backed software platform in the world using this exact model.
Yes, because everyone assumes software companies grow by offering free trials and running feature-heavy ads. But this company didn't lead with the software. They focused first on selling information products, books, courses, and seminars that taught a completely new philosophy of marketing and business growth.
They taught the concept first.
Exactly. And as the entrepreneur learns this new, amazing way of doing business from the book, they have an epiphany. They realize, wow, I need to implement this strategy immediately But building this from scratch looks incredibly hard.
And right at that exact moment of maximum desire, the company says, oh, by the way, we built a software tool that executes this exact strategy with one click. The information product creates the burning desire for the physical product or software. It creates the exact problem that your core business solves.
That is so smart. So the practical takeaway for you listening, whether you are a plumber, an accountant, or a personal trainer, look at your current job. What is the specialized knowledge you use every single day that your customers find confusing or overwhelming?
Right, what are they always asking you about?
Packaging that knowledge into a story, a guide, or a workshop, that is your ultimate front-end marketing strategy.
Okay, so we understand the value of the information. We know we have a potato gun inside us. But having brilliant advice isn't enough.
It's really not.
The world is tragically full of brilliant, deeply knowledgeable experts who are completely broke because no one is listening to them. You need a mechanism to gather an audience.
Which brings us to the architecture of a mass movement. When the researchers analyzed historical figures who had built massive, dedicated audiences and created sweeping cultural changes, they found a startling consistency.
Yes, across the board.
Whether they were studying the rise of political movements, major world religions, or even modern tech cults like Apple enthusiasts, they noticed the exact same three fundamental pillars.
Pillar number 1, a charismatic leader. Pillar number 2, a future-based cause that is bigger than the individual. And pillar number 3, they offer their audience a new opportunity.
To understand why these three pillars are so effective, we really have to look at the psychology of crowds. There's a brilliant quote from the philosopher Eric Hoffer in his seminal book, The True Believer.
Oh, this quote is so good.
He writes, "Fear of the future causes us to lean against and cling to the present, while faith in the future renders us perceptive to change." Let's really dissect that.
Let's do it.
Fear of the future causes us to cling to the present. If people are scared of what's coming, if they're anxious about the economy, their health, their marriage, they freeze.
Yes, they paralyze themselves.
They just grip whatever they have right now, even if they absolutely hate it. They stay in the terrible job. They stay in the toxic relationship.
Because the known pain of the present is perceived as safer than the unknown terror of the future. Therefore, if you want to create a movement, if you want to successfully lead people out of their current pain, you cannot just tell them their current situation is bad.
Right, they already know that.
They know that. You have to give them hope of something demonstrably better. You have to paint a vivid vision of the future that replaces their fear with faith. That faith is the only thing that makes them drop their defenses and become perceptive to the change you are offering.
People are silently begging to be led. They want to cast their personal anxiety into a vision bigger than themselves. Now, I have to pause here and throw a massive red flag.
I know exactly where you're going.
The research we are looking at literally uses the word culture to describe this dynamic. And when it analyzes these mass movements, it looks at the mechanics of figures ranging from Jesus Christ to Adolf Hitler.
Yes, it does.
Hold on. Analyzing Hitler to learn how to sell an online course, that is not just uncomfortable, it feels fundamentally unethical. Using the word cult as a business goal, I think a lot of people listening are going to reject this entirely.
It is incredibly jarring, and you have every right to feel that discomfort. It pushes right up against our moral boundaries. But we need to separate the tool from the intent.
Okay, explain that.
What we are looking at here are the neutral, immutable mechanics of human psychology. Gravity doesn't care if it's pulling down a leaf or crashing an airplane. It's just physics. These three pillars, the leader, the cause, the new opportunity, are the physics of mass human influence.
So you're saying a cult leader and a revolutionary civil rights leader are pulling the exact same psychological levers?
Yes, they're using the exact same architecture to mobilize human behavior on a massive scale. Like any powerful tool, whether it's nuclear energy or the printing press, these mechanics could be wielded for horrific global destruction, or they could be used for profound, generational positive impact.
So the mechanics are agnostic?
The mechanics remain identical, regardless of the morality of the person holding the microphone.
I'm still grappling with it. It just feels manipulative.
Consider this. If ethical, well-intentioned people refuse to learn the physics of influence because it makes them uncomfortable, who is left wielding those tools?
Oof. Only the bad actors.
Only the scammers. If you have a methodology that can genuinely save marriages, or reverse chronic illness, or pull families out of crushing debt, I would argue you have a moral obligation to understand the most powerful tools of persuasion available to get that cure into their hands.
Okay. That is a heavy, sobering perspective. But it makes sense. If you have the cure, you need the vehicle to deliver it. It's the physics of influence. Let's ground this in reality. How do we practically apply these mechanics to start a movement? Let's say I want to start a movement in the health space.
This is where we introduce the concept of the blue ocean niche. If we look at the macro landscape, almost all expert businesses fall into three core markets: wealth, health, and relationships.
The big three.
Inside those three massive oceans are submarkets. For health, a submarket might be weight loss, or strength training, or nutrition.
But the data specifically warns us the money and the impact are not in the submarket.
Correct. The submarkets are what we call red oceans. They are blood red because they are filled with thousands of sharks competitors, massive corporations, established influencers, all fighting over the exact same customers. If you jump into the weight loss submarket, you will be eaten alive.
Because you have no differentiation.
Exactly. To survive, you have to go one step deeper. You have to carve out a unique, uncontested spot in the ecosystem where you can thrive. You have to find a blue ocean. That is your micro niche.
Give me an example of how you might narrow that down.
Well, let's take the health market. The submarket is weight loss. Don't just be another generic weight loss coach. That's a red ocean. Go deeper. Create a micro niche. Weight loss for postpartum mothers recovering from C-sections.
Oh, that's incredibly specific. Or in the wealth market, submarket, real estate. Don't be a generic real estate guru. Blue ocean niche? How to buy commercial warehouse space using self-directed IRAs.
Perfect. Or relationships, submarket, dating, blue ocean niche, navigating the dating world as a single dad in your 40s.
Exactly. The practical takeaway here is rule number 1 of positioning. Never compete in a crowded market. Look at what everyone else is doing, find the massive gaps in their coverage, and carve out a micro niche where your highly specific angle makes you the undisputed logical leader.
You want to complement the other players in your macro market, not compete directly against them.
I see. Because if I am the single dad in your 40s dating coach, the generic dating coaches aren't my competitors anymore. They might actually become my referral partners because when they get a client who is a 45-year-old divorced dad, they realize my specific program serves him way better.
Precisely. You become the go-to specialist. Okay, so we have carved out our blue ocean niche. Now we need to populate it. That brings us to pillar number 1 of building a movement, the charismatic leader.
And here's another major hurdle for people. When I hear the term charismatic leader, my brain immediately goes to the extroverts. I think of the guy on stage jumping up and down, the people who are just naturally magnetic, loud, and born to be in the spotlight.
The stereotypical guru.
Right. I am an introvert. I sweat profusely if I have to give a toast at a wedding. I cannot be Tony Robbins. Does that mean I can't lead a movement?
That is the exact imposter syndrome that keeps some of the most brilliant minds completely hidden from the world. They hear a voice telling them they aren't loud enough, or smart enough, or certified enough to lead.
It's paralyzing.
But when we look at the case studies of highly successful modern leaders, we find a specific set of rules for cultivating charisma. And none of them require you to be a born extrovert. Charisma, in this context, is manufactured through positioning, not personality volume.
Let's unpack these rules. Rule number 1, live the life your audience wishes they could live. You have to become what the research calls an attractive character.
Yes. People don't follow you because you are loud. They follow you because you have successfully navigated the journey they are currently suffering through. They want the result you have already achieved.
The gap between where they are in their pain and where they perceive you to be in your success creates a magnetic vacuum.
And that vacuum is what we call attraction.
This brings up an analogy from our notes that I absolutely love, and it instantly relieved so much anxiety for me. The one chapter ahead analogy.
It's incredibly freeing.
It's the idea that you are like a high school math tutor. You don't need to be Albert Einstein or have a PhD in quantum physics to tutor a freshman in algebra. You literally just need to have passed the algebra class last semester.
Right.
You just need to be one chapter ahead in the textbook.
It is the most vital perspective shift an expert can make. You do not have to be the foremost global authority on your topic. In fact, if you are too advanced, you actually lose the ability to teach beginners because you've forgotten what it feels like to struggle with the basics.
You suffer from the curse of knowledge.
Exactly. You just have to be one chapter ahead of the people you're trying to help. Yes, there will always be people infinitely more advanced than you. Those are the people you learn from. But never let the existence of those masters stop you from turning around and extending a hand to the person who is one chapter behind you.
But what happens when the inevitable critic shows up? You put out your course on, say, overcoming anxiety, and someone comments, "Excuse me, where is your psychology degree? Are you board certified to teach this?"
To answer that, we have to look at a legendary story involving the very guy you mentioned earlier, Tony Robbins.
Oh, this is a great story.
Early in his career, Tony was taking a certification class in NLP neuro-linguistic programming. He was studying the mechanics of psychological state changes. But as he's sitting in the hotel conference room, he realizes he already understands the mechanics well enough to actually help people right now.
He didn't want to wait for the piece of paper at the end of the course.
Exactly. So he leaves the hotel, walks across the street to a restaurant, finds people who are struggling, in this case, smokers, and just starts applying the techniques to help them quit smoking right then and there.
And what happened? Did the instructors love his initiative?
No, they were furious. He got kicked out of the certification program for practicing without a license. The establishment rejected him because he hadn't jumped through their bureaucratic hoops.
But he went on to build a multi-billion-dollar empire and transform tens of millions of lives globally.
He did, because he understood the core lesson.
Yeah.
Your results are your certification. The marketplace does not care about your diploma if you can't solve their problem.
That's the truth.
And conversely, if you can genuinely get someone a life-changing result, you have the absolute right to lead them, regardless of what the establishment says.
That leads directly into rule number 2 for becoming a charismatic leader: maintain absolute certainty.
There is a quote we pulled from a performance coach named Satama Gali. Self-confidence is for kids.
Wow, that's bold.
It is. Because confidence is fragile. It fluctuates based on how you feel that day or the feedback you get on a post. If you want to make an impact, you must cultivate certainty. In any human interaction, the person with the highest level of certainty will always influence the person with less certainty. Certainty is a lighthouse in a storm.
And how do you manufacture certainty if you don't naturally feel it? Because a lot of us don't.
You build it through repetition, you share your message daily, you publish a podcast, you write articles, you record videos, you speak your truth into the void until you refine your arguments, discover your true voice, and build an unshakable foundation of certainty in your core message.
Which brings us to rule number 3, and this is probably the most terrifying one for most people. Polarize your audience. You have to intentionally be okay with people actively disliking you.
If you try to please everyone, you will please absolutely no one. If you water down your message to make it universally palatable and safe, it loses all its edge. It won't have the kinetic energy required to jolt someone out of their apathy and create a true mass movement.
So you have to take a stand.
The math of leadership dictates that for every 100 people who become your rabid, true fans, you will inevitably attract one person who actively, vocally despises you and everything you stand for. And they'll be loud.
But the strategy isn't just to ignore them. The research says you have to use persuasion, which includes a tactic called throwing rocks at their enemies. I'll be honest, that sounds incredibly aggressive and negative.
It sounds combative, but again, it is deeply rooted in evolutionary psychology. It's about tribalism. It's about creating a clear us versus the them dynamic within your community. You must take a definitive stand for what you believe in, clearly articulate why your movement is fundamentally different, and identify what you are collectively fighting against.
So it's not necessarily throwing rocks at individual people, but throwing rocks at a conflicting ideology or a systemic problem.
Exactly. Having a common enemy bonds your true fans to you, like superglue. If you are a functional medicine expert, your enemy might be the corrupt pharmaceutical industry that keeps people sick for profit.
Ah, I see.
When people are engaged in a struggle against a chronic illness, against a rigged financial system, against a toxic corporate culture, they are desperate for allies. If you can perfectly articulate their silent struggle and boldly name the enemy out loud, they stop being casual followers. They become zealous partners in your crusade.
The final rule for the charismatic leader is a practical one, but it trips up so many kind-hearted experts. You must charge for your advice.
We have to view this as a moral imperative. The harsh reality of human nature is that free advice is entirely worthless because it carries no weight. The foundational rule of transformation is, those who pay attention.
It is painfully true. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've sat down over coffee with a friend, given them a masterclass on how to fix a problem in their business, laid out a step-by-step roadmap.
And let me guess, they do absolutely nothing.
Nothing. 6 months later, they are still complaining about the exact same problem. But if they had hired a consultant and wired them $5,000 for that exact same conversation, they would have stayed up all night implementing it.
Exactly. The financial transaction is not just about you making a living. It is a required psychological trigger for the client. The research highlights a powerful illustrative example involving a high-level mastermind group. The host of the mastermind let a few close friends attend for free, while everyone else in the room paid tens of thousands of dollars to be there.
Right. And the friends who got in for free took the binders home, put them on a shelf, and changed nothing about their lives.
Exactly. They did absolutely nothing with the information, but the entrepreneurs who paid top dollar heard the exact same lectures, took the exact same notes, and went out and built multi-million-dollar enterprises.
Wow.
The information was identical. The variable was the financial pain. The money was the accountability mechanism. By underpricing your expertise or giving it away out of a sense of guilt, you are actively sabotaging your audience.
Ugh.
You're depriving them of the emotional leverage they need to actually do the hard work of transformation.
So, to synthesize this entire charismatic leader section, give yourself permission to step up to the microphone right now. Your ability to get a result is your only required credential. Cultivate deep certainty, embrace polarization to attract your true tribe, and charge a premium so your followers have the skin in the game required to change their own lives.
Now that we have established the leader, we move to the second pillar of a mass movement, the cause. You have to paint that vision of the future.
And our research introduces this through the 4-minute mile concept.
It's a classic example of breaking psychological barriers. For decades, the global medical and athletic communities believed it was physically impossible for a human heart and lungs to run a mile in under 4 minutes. They thought you would literally drop dead.
Right.
Then in 1954, Roger Bannister did it. He ran it in 3 minutes and 59.4 seconds. He didn't drop dead. He broke the 4-minute mile.
But the fascinating part isn't just that he did it, it's what happened immediately afterward.
Right. Within weeks and months, dozens of other runners suddenly started breaking the 4-minute mile. Did human evolution suddenly leap forward in a month? No. The physical capability was always there. What changed was that the belief barrier had been shattered.
The impossible became possible.
As a leader, your initial paramount job is to achieve the result first, to run your own 4-minute mile in whatever niche you are in. You have to bleed, figure it out, and then hold up the trophy to prove to your audience that it is actually possible.
You become the tangible proof of hope. There's a great pop culture analogy here from the movie Rogue One, a Star Wars story.
Oh, yes.
Cassian and Jyn are trying to mobilize a fractured group of rebels to go on a suicide mission against the Empire. And Cassian says they need to invoke the name Saw Gerrera just to get the meeting. The name itself has become more than a person, it has become the cause. It represents the hope of rebellion against impossible odds.
It's a perfect illustration of how movements scale. People need a banner to rally behind. They need a symbol that encapsulates their hope. And this ties directly into the critical necessity of letting your audience self-identify with your cause.
This is a subtle but massive point. The research highlights the story of a female entrepreneur who had built a decent following, but she had named her entire company and her movement after her own maiden name.
Which is a very common ego trap for experts. They want their name in lights.
Yeah.
But while her followers liked her and respected her content, the movement was stagnant. Why? Because a follower cannot fundamentally identify with someone else's last name.
Right.
It's biologically impossible to deeply associate your core identity with the phrase, "I am Smith Consulting."
The moment she realized this fatal flaw, she completely rebranded. She created a banner her followers could actually pick up and hold themselves.
We see this with massive modern movements. Look at how certain tech communities brand themselves, or fitness communities like CrossFit. In the marketing space, you see identities like, "I'm a funnel hacker," or an energy drink company that brands itself as Ignite, energy for those who see things differently.
The moment someone hears that, they think, yes, I've always felt like an outsider. I do see things differently. That is exactly who I am.
The psychological shift is profound. They stop being a consumer of your product, and the product becomes a projection of their identity. The practical takeaway here is non-negotiable. You must create an "I am a blank" statement for your audience. If your followers cannot take the core identity of your movement, print it on a t-shirt, and wear it proudly in public to signal to others who they are, you might have a profitable audience, but you do not have a mass movement.
Okay, we have the leader, we have the cause, we have the banner. Now for the third pillar, which is where the actual mechanics of the sale happen. The new opportunity. And this is where I had my biggest personal paradigm shift. The research makes a brutal distinction here. Why does an improvement offer almost always fail while a new opportunity succeeds?
This is arguably the single most misunderstood concept in the entire expert industry. where 90% of entrepreneurs fail. Most experts, because they love their topic, default to selling improvement. They look at their audience and say, I see you're trying to do this thing. I can teach you how to do it 10% better, a little bit faster, or slightly cheaper.
I see you are running on the treadmill to lose weight. Buy my course, and I'll teach you how to run on the treadmill with better posture so you burn 50 more calories.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Logically, it sounds like a good offer, but psychologically, it is disastrous. Because you have to account for the immense, heavy baggage of your audience's past failures. If they have been struggling to lose weight on a treadmill for 5 years, and you come along and offer them a better treadmill routine, their internal defense mechanisms slam shut instantly.
Their brain says, I already tried the treadmill, I failed at the treadmill, therefore I will fail at this. This won't work for me.
Yes. And we have to look deeper at the ego protection happening here. If you sell someone an improvement offer, a better version of what they are already doing, you are implicitly telling them that their previous failures were entirely their fault.
Oh, wow.
You are saying, the treadmill works fine, you are just using it wrong. You are the problem. The human ego violently rejects that narrative.
I never thought about it like that.
Furthermore, if they buy your improvement offer and they actually succeed, who gets the credit? They do. Their ego says, well, I was already on the treadmill. I just pushed myself a little harder. But if they fail, who gets the blame? You do, as the expert. That guru's treadmill posture trick was a scam.
That is a total lose-lose scenario for the expert. You take all the blame and get none of the credit.
Exactly. But a new opportunity completely bypasses this ego trap. It gives them a pristine, clean slate. You aren't telling them to fix what they broke. You are telling them that the old vehicle they were using was fundamentally flawed from the start. You validate their pain by giving them an external enemy.
It wasn't your fault you didn't lose weight. The whole concept of steady-state cardio is a lie designed by the fitness industry to keep you trapped.
You were using the wrong tool. Throw the treadmill away. Here's a completely new vehicle, the ketogenic diet. All their past failures are instantly washed away because they realized they weren't failing. They were just playing a rigged game.
A new opportunity replaces the shame of past failure with the pure dopamine of hope. It's a completely new vehicle for change.
Yes. And because it's a new vehicle, if they succeed, you get all the credit as the visionary who introduced it to them.
Okay, so we have constructed the architecture of our movement, but excitement and hope do not automatically equal sales. How do we transition these hyped-up followers into actual believers who will pull out their wallets? Because if they don't fundamentally believe this new opportunity will work for them specifically, they won't take action.
To create that belief, we have to look at the mechanics of persuasion. The most effective presentations revolve around a concept called the one thing, or the big domino. The biggest mistake experts make is trying to convince their audience of 20 different complex ideas in a single pitch. They overwhelm the cognitive load. You should only have one goal: get them to believe one core truth.
If I can get them to believe this one overarching concept, let's say ketosis is the only biological way to permanently burn fat, then all their other minor objections like, what about counting calories or what about running, become totally irrelevant. I just push over the big domino and it knocks down all the smaller ones.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that big domino is currently being propped up by a structural support system of false beliefs. Your job is to systematically knock out those supports. And psychological research categorizes these false beliefs into 3 very specific buckets: vehicle, internal, and external.
Okay, let's break these down using our diet example.
The first false belief is always about the vehicle itself. This is skepticism of the new opportunity. They hear your pitch and think this high-fat diet thing sounds like a gimmick. Eating bacon to lose weight violates the laws of thermodynamics. It doesn't actually work.
So you have to prove the vehicle is sound. What's the second belief?
The second is internal. This is where self-doubt creeps in. Okay, fine, maybe the science is real and the high-fat diet works for biohackers and athletes, but I have terrible willpower. I don't know how to cook. I don't have the discipline to track macros. I personally cannot do this.
They believe in the tool, but they don't believe in themselves. And the third?
The third is external. This is where they blame outside forces. The diet works, and I could probably learn to cook the meals, but I work 60 hours a week, and my spouse buys all the groceries and loves pasta, so they will never support this. They project the blame onto time, money, or other people.
So vehicle is doubting the framework, internal is doubting their own capability, and external is blaming outside circumstances. Now, here is where I see most experts fail spectacularly. When someone raises one of these objections, the expert immediately fires back with data.
Yes, the fatal flaw of the academic mind. They want to jump straight into teaching strategy and logic to prove the person wrong.
You think keto doesn't work? Here is a 40-page spreadsheet of macronutrient metabolic pathways in 3 double-blind, peer-reviewed studies.
Right. But if this student fundamentally doesn't believe they're capable internally or thinks their spouse will actively sabotage them externally, the most scientifically accurate spreadsheet in the world is utterly useless. Logic does not change belief. You absolutely must establish emotional belief before you teach a single tactic.
But how? If I can't use data and facts to break those false beliefs, what do I use?
You use the most powerful psychological hacking tool humans have ever developed. The story, specifically what the frameworks call epiphany bridge stories.
Let's do a deep dive into the neuroscience here because this is fascinating. Why does a story work when a spreadsheet fails?
When you present data, facts, or logical arguments to a human brain, you immediately trigger the amygdala and the brain's critical evaluation filters. The listener's brain says, "Oh, you're trying to persuade me. I need to defend myself." They start looking for flaws in your data. They argue with you in their head.
Their shields are fully up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when you say, "Let me tell you a story about what happened to me," those defensive filters drop. We are biologically hardwired to consume narrative. When we hear a well-told story, we experience a phenomenon called narrative transport. We literally sync our brain waves with the storyteller. We simulate the emotions, the frustration, and the tension of the narrative as if it were happening to us.
So instead of showing them a spreadsheet of why my diet works, I tell them a story about me sitting in my doctor's office terrified, being told my blood work was a disaster. I talk about crying in my car afterward, feeling completely helpless, right before I stumbled onto this weird high-fat article that changed everything.
Yes. An epiphany bridge story intentionally recreates the exact emotional sequence, the pain, the search, the aha moment that you experienced when you first discovered the new opportunity.
Yeah.
Because when you first discovered your topic, you weren't logically convinced by a spreadsheet either. You had an emotional experience that gave you hope. Only after that emotional epiphany did you go geek out on the logical data.
I have to admit, and I think a lot of listeners will feel this too, intentionally scripting out my most vulnerable, painful moments to use in a sales presentation feels a little manipulative, like I'm weaponizing my trauma to bypass their logic filters and get into their wallet.
It is a profound ethical question, and it's the razor's edge of influence. Is it manipulative? Yes, technically, all persuasion is manipulation of state. But the ethical dividing line is the intent and the reality of the vehicle. If you are using these psychological triggers to sell them a fake supplement that does nothing, you are a scam artist.
Right.
But if you truly deeply believe that your new opportunity will save their life, save their marriage, or rescue their business, then using facts and data and knowing full well that facts will trigger their defenses and cause them to reject the cure is actually the unethical choice.
Oh, that's a huge shift in perspective.
If you have the cure, it is your absolute responsibility to use the most effective communication tools available to bypass their self-sabotaging defenses. You tell the story so they can walk across the bridge with you and arrive at the exact same life-changing epiphany you did, entirely on their own, without feeling pressured.
That reframes the entire concept of sales. It's an act of service. And practically, you structure your presentation to systematically tell 3 specific stories.
Yes, the 3 secrets framework. You tell one story to break the vehicle belief, then you tell a second story to break the internal belief, and a third story to shatter the external belief.
Give me a rapid-fire example of how a software company might do this.
Sure. Secret 1, the vehicle. How I discovered that the sales script is 100 times more important than the coding of the website. Secret 2, internal. How I built $1 million funnel without knowing how to write a single line of code. Secret 3, external. How I launched my business using just my smartphone and a free Facebook account with 0 advertising budget.
Brilliant. Vehicle, internal, external. Boom, boom, boom. The practical takeaway for the listener is to sit down tonight and write out the #1 reason someone would say no to your advice in each of those 3 categories. Then dig into your own past and write out the exact story from your life that proves that specific objection wrong.
Which brings us to the final hurdle. You have broken their false beliefs. They are emotionally invested. They want the new opportunity. Now, you actually have to ask for the money. You have to close the sale.
And this requires completely embracing what Jay Abraham calls your moral obligation to sell.
We touched on this earlier. But it bears repeating because it is where most experts choke. If you believe in your product, you have a moral obligation to serve your customers by selling it to them. If you get to the end of a brilliant presentation, give them all this hope, and then suddenly get shy and whisper the price because you don't want to seem salesy, you are abandoning them at the finish line.
You are leaving them with the excitement of the new opportunity, but refusing to give them the actual tool to execute it.
Exactly. And the primary mechanism we use to present the offer clearly and powerfully is called the stack.
I found the psychology behind the stack absolutely fascinating. Explain what a stack is, and more importantly, why is it neurologically necessary to visually pile up the value of what you are offering?
A stack is a visual slide or a physical list presented at the end of a pitch. It itemizes every single component the customer is getting, along with a high, anchored, monetary value for each piece. The reason this is neurologically required is because human beings have incredibly limited working memory, especially when they're under cognitive load like when they're taking in a 60-minute presentation.
Right. If I just list off 5 things you're getting, your brain drops the first 3 immediately.
Exactly. If you introduce bonus hashtag 1, they get excited. Then you introduce bonus hashtag 2, and their brain drops bonus hashtag 1 to make room. By the time you get to the price, they only remember the very last thing you said. So they compare the full price of the entire system against only the last bonus they can remember, and it feels too expensive.
So how does the stack fix this cognitive load issue?
Repetition and visual anchoring. When you introduce the core product, you show a slide with the product and the value, say $5,000. When you introduce bonus 1, the next slide doesn't just show bonus 1, it shows the core product plus sales bonus 1 and the new total value of $7,000. When you introduce bonus 2, the slide shows the core product bonus 1 and bonus 2, total value $10,000. You are literally building a visual tower of value.
So by the time you reveal the actual discounted price, say $997, their brain is comparing it against a visually reinforced anchor of $10,000. Suddenly, it's not an expense, it's an irresistible bargain.
It proves logically that what they are receiving in transformational value is worth exponentially more than the actual cash you're asking for.
And to really drive that value home, our research highlights the use of trial closes throughout the pitch. My absolute favorite technique here was the if-all statement. I started using this in my own head immediately.
Walk us through how you would use it.
It's a pattern interrupt where you stop focusing on all the deliverables and you ask the audience a highly focused question. If all this system did was get you this specific result, would it be worth this price? It completely forces the listener to isolate the value of the transformation.
Give me a real-world example.
Let's go back to the dentist. The dentist is pitching a high-end sleep apnea device for $3,000. Instead of talking about the titanium hinges or the custom molding, the dentist asks the patient, if all this device did was finally give you a full 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep, so you wake up with enough energy to actually play with your kids without snapping at them, would that be worth $3,000?
And what does the patient's brain do?
It stops thinking about the titanium, it visualizes the emotional relief of playing with their kids, and the patient has to say, yes, God, yes, that is absolutely worth $3,000.
It perfectly shifts their perspective from the raw cost of the plastic and metal to the priceless value of the emotional transformation. So the ultimate practical application for someone just starting out who's terrified to charge high prices is this. When you first launch, work for free or cheap with a small beta group. Pour your absolute heart and soul into getting them the result. Do things that don't scale. Gather undeniable proof, case studies, and testimonials.
Right, get the proof.
But once you have that proof, once you know in your bones that your vehicle works, never ever apologize for charging what that transformation is actually worth.
We have covered an immense, sweeping landscape today. We've gone from the macroeconomic shift of the cash flow quadrant all the way down to the granular neuroscience of storytelling and price anchoring.
If we pull all these disparate threads together, the potato guns, the cult dynamics, the 4-minute miles, the stacks, what is the single core synthesis of this entire framework?
When you distill all of this down, the profound realization is this. True wealth and lasting impact do not come from simply hoarding knowledge or being the smartest person in the room. They come from recognizing that your specific past struggles, your late-night potato gun experiments, your painful failed attempts, your eventual hard-won breakthroughs are the exact curriculum someone else in the world is silently begging for right now.
It's incredibly powerful.
By stepping past your imposter syndrome, assuming the mantle of a leader, painting a vivid vision of the future, and boldly offering a completely new vehicle for change, You aren't just selling digital information, you are providing a tangible vehicle for human transformation.
Absolute.
Remember, your results are your ultimate certification. Your vulnerable stories are your most powerful tool of persuasion, and your absolute willingness to charge for that transformation is the only guarantee that your followers will actually put in the work to change their own lives.
It is a beautifully engineered psychological system for turning your lived experience into a movement that profoundly serves others, while simultaneously providing you with the ultimate leverage and financial freedom.
You now have the foundational blueprints. You understand how to build your movement, how to craft your message to bypass logical defenses, and how to confidently ask your audience to invest in themselves. But this raises the ultimate next question.
It's a big one.
Once you've built this perfectly tuned, highly persuasive vehicle for change in the middle of the desert, how do you actually get millions of people to stop scrolling, pay attention, and enter your world? What is the raw fuel that fills the funnel? That is a massive, fascinating puzzle, and exactly what you should explore next on your journey to mastering these expert frameworks. Until then, remember, the painful hurdle you just jumped over is the exact blueprint someone else is waiting to buy. What if the secret to scaling a business wasn't, raising venture capital, but actually finding a way to get paid every time you acquire a new customer?
I mean, it sounds like a complete paradox, like getting paid to find customers.
Right. It sounds like total internet marketing snake oil, right? I mean, we're always
Yeah.
told you have to spend money to make money. But today we're looking at a framework that just completely flips the traditional math of customer acquisition upside down.
It really does. It's a complete inversion of how we're taught to think about business from day one.
Exactly. And like the most surprising part of all this, the engine for this entire system actually starts with the weird niche hobbies and, the specialized knowledge that you're already obsessed with.
Yeah, the stuff you already know.
Yeah.
We are so conditioned to believe that you have to just bleed cash for months or even years just to build an audience. But we're moving into this reality where you can establish a framework that actually pulls people toward you,
Yeah.
and they compensate you for the privilege of being marketed to.
Which is just wild to think about. I know you're probably listening to this in your car right now or maybe doing the dishes and thinking, okay, get paid to get customers? Sure. If it were really that easy, wouldn't literally every Fortune 500 company be doing it?
Right. That skepticism is totally natural.
It is. And that skepticism is exactly where we need to start today, because we are diving deep into Chapter 2 of our source material, exploring Russell Brunson's strategies around the two distinct types of expert businesses.
And, this isn't just theory. We're unpacking the actual literal mechanics of how this works.
Yeah, exactly. Because whether you're sitting in a cubicle dreaming of starting a side hustle from scratch with $0, or maybe you already run an established brick and mortar store or a software company and you're just sick of paying Mark Zuckerberg for every single lead, understanding these two models is essentially the master key to modern entrepreneurship.
It really is. And it's crucial to understand up front that this isn't about, slapping a guru label on yourself and just peddling thin air.
No, not at all.
It's about fundamentally restructuring the power dynamic between you and your market. It's taking the passions you already have, the hard-earned lessons you've actually survived, and engineering them into a vehicle that not only creates massive scale, but makes you entirely immune to the rising costs of traditional advertising.
Immune to ad costs. I love that. So let's start with the first scenario, because I think this is where the barrier to entry is the most fascinating for most people. Brunson calls this first path the ultimate startup.
The ultimate startup, yeah.
And to really grasp why it's the ultimate startup, we have to look at what a normal startup actually demands from a person. Like, let's say you and I decide we want to open a boutique coffee shop, or maybe launch a new app. What's the very first wall we hit?
Oh, it's always capital. Every single time.
Money.
The barrier to entry in, 99% of traditional businesses, is just intensely financial. You want that coffee shop? Well, you need to sign a 5-year commercial lease.
Which is terrifying.
Oh, absolutely. And then you need to buy espresso machines that cost as much as a small car. You need permits, you need a build out, you need inventory, you need to run payroll.
Yeah, you're essentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in the hole, and your stress levels are just through the roof before you have ever poured a single cup of coffee.
Before you've even validated that anyone in the neighborhood actually wants your product.
Exactly. You're basically taking on this mountain of debt and just crossing your fingers that people like your latte art.
And honestly, if it's a tech startup, it's arguably worse.
Oh, for sure.
You're giving away equity to venture capitalists, you're burning through cash to hire developers, and you're just constantly living under the threat of the runway running out. When is the money gone?
Yeah, the dreaded runway. But this first path we're talking about today, building a business strictly around your expertise through information products or coaching or consulting, it completely bypasses that financial slaughterhouse.
It really does. It requires absolutely zero venture capital, zero commercial real estate,
And why is that?
because your inventory is your lived experience.
I love that. Your inventory is your experience.
Yeah, the raw materials for your product are already sitting right inside your head. You don't have to manufacture it in a factory overseas. You just have to, extract it, organize it, and present it.
That is such a cool concept. But let me push back here a little bit on behalf of everyone listening, because the immediate psychological block, and I know I've felt this, and you've probably felt this too, is imposter syndrome.
Oh, the classic imposter syndrome. Absolutely.
You hear the phrase expert business and your brain immediately goes, whoa, back up. I don't have a PhD in this. I haven't been on Oprah. I'm not some world-renowned authority. Why would anyone pay to listen to me?
That is the number one objection, hands down. And it actually comes from a fundamental misunderstanding of what an expert even is in this context.
How so?
Well, we have this academic view of expertise, right?
Mm.
Where you picture a guy with elbow patches in a dusty library who has studied a single microscopic topic for 40 years.
Right, the professor in the ivory tower.
Exactly. But in the marketplace, an expert is rarely born that way. The genesis of an expert almost always starts with a very personal, almost irrational obsession.
Ah, the geeking out phase.
Yes. Think about something you've recently become obsessed with. Maybe you decided you wanted to run a marathon, or you wanted to fix your gut health, or you wanted to learn how to swing trade stocks.
Okay, yeah,
What happens? You just fall down the rabbit hole.
completely.
You buy 5 books on Amazon. You listen to every single podcast you can find on your morning commute.
Yeah.
You join the weird Reddit forums. You are just consuming a staggering amount of information.
Oh, I've been there. You become that annoying person at the dinner party who won't stop talking about sourdough starters or cryptocurrency, and everyone's eyes are just completely glazing over.
Precisely. But here is the critical pivot. You don't just consume the information, right? You apply it to yourself.
Okay.
You bake the bread. You fix your diet. You make the stock trades. You go through the trial and error, the frustration, the failures, and eventually you get a result.
You actually figure it out.
You become your own first success story.
Yeah.
And that is the actual birth of the expertise. You don't need the PhD because your target audience isn't a room full of academics.
Right, they're not grading your paper.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your target audience is just the person who is standing exactly where you were 6 months ago.
That is such a liberating reframe. I mean, you just need to be one chapter ahead of the person you're teaching.
One chapter ahead. That's it.
You don't need to be the foremost global authority on personal finance to help a 20-something figure out how to stop living paycheck to paycheck, right? You just need to have successfully done it yourself.
And actually, in many ways, being just one chapter ahead makes you a much better teacher than the global authority
Really? Why is that?
because of a cognitive bias called the curse of knowledge.
Oh, I've heard of this.
Yeah. When someone's been doing something for 30 years, it becomes entirely second nature to them. They've totally forgotten what it feels like to not know the absolute basics.
Right. They can't relate to the beginner struggle anymore.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
If a grandmaster chess player tries to teach a 5-year-old, it is incredibly frustrating for both of them. The grandmaster just can't comprehend why the child doesn't see a simple 5-move checkmate.
Yeah, it's just obvious to them.
But if a 10-year-old who just learned how the pieces move teaches that same 5-year-old, the instruction is perfectly tailored to the beginner's mind. The 10-year-old remembers exactly what was confusing about the knight's movement,
That makes so much sense. Okay, let's unpack this teaching element a bit more, because there is this brilliant concept in Brunson's framework that completely challenged my assumptions about how we actually learn things.
Yeah, there's a huge paradigm shift.
Usually we view learning as a one-way street, right? Like, I sit in the audience, I absorb the information, I practice in my garage, I get better, and that's it. I just keep reading, keep practicing, and theoretically I just keep getting better in a straight line.
Right, the traditional model of mastery.
But the argument here is that simply practicing isn't enough. The source material claims that teaching others is actually a prerequisite for achieving true mastery yourself. And I have to ask, why is that? Why can't I just quietly read 500 books on a topic, practice by myself, and call myself a master?
Well, because if all you do is study and practice in isolation, your personal growth will inevitably hit a plateau.
A plateau, okay.
Yeah, it's like this invisible ceiling between theoretical knowledge and applied, deconstructed wisdom. Brunson uses a fantastic, really concrete example from his own life to illustrate this mechanism. It involves his time as a highly competitive collegiate wrestler.
Right. I remember this part. So he was obsessed with wrestling. He's doing that geeking out phase we just talked about. He's studying the tapes, he's drilling, he's putting in those grueling hours on the mat. He learned, he implemented, and he became very, very good.
Very good. Elite level.
But eventually he hit a wall. His personal athletic growth just stalled out. He couldn't seem to get to that next elite tier just by practicing more.
Exactly. And the way he broke through that ceiling had absolutely nothing to do with training harder or lifting more weights.
So what does he do?
It happened because he started volunteering to coach kids in wrestling.
Wow.
And this is where the psychology of mastery gets really fascinating. When you are highly skilled at something, like a collegiate wrestler executing a takedown, a vast majority of your action becomes unconscious competence.
Unconscious competence, like muscle memory. Right, you don't even think about it, your body just reacts.
Yes, exactly. But muscle memory is actually a double-edged sword. It makes you fast, sure, but it makes you blind to the micromechanics of why it works.
Okay, I see where this is going.
So when Brunson tried to show a move to a group of 10-year-olds, he couldn't just say, hey, go out there and hit a double leg takedown.
Right, they would just look at him blankly.
Exactly. He was forced to hit the pause button on his own unconscious competence. He had to painstakingly deconstruct his own process.
He had to become hyper-aware. Suddenly he has to explain, like, okay, your left foot needs to be exactly 2 inches outside their lead foot. Your hips need to drop to this exact specific angle. Your hand needs to grip right at the bend of the knee, not the thigh.
Precisely. And by breaking it down into those microscopic, digestible pieces for those kids, he had an epiphany. He realized that in his own matches against college athletes, he had actually gotten sloppy.
Oh, wow.
He had started taking those tiny foundational details for granted. The act of teaching actually illuminated his own blind spots. By focusing on contributing to the kid's success, he rebuilt his own foundation, which made him a significantly sharper, more dangerous athlete on the mat.
So the awareness he gained from teaching was the exact fuel he needed to break his own plateau. That is such a powerful, counterintuitive takeaway.
It really is.
Because if you are listening to this right now and you feel stuck in a skill that you absolutely love, like maybe you're a coder and you can't seem to get to the next level of elegant architecture, or you're a writer and your prose just feels stale, or you play guitar and you're just running the same scales over and over again.
Right, you're just spinning your wheels.
The instinct is to buy another masterclass, right? The instinct is to consume more. But this framework argues that your next step is actually to stop consuming and start contributing. Find someone who is a few steps behind you and teach them.
It completely reframes the purpose of an expert business. You aren't doing it just to stroke your ego or make money, though, those are definitely nice byproducts.
Sure.
You are doing it because it forces you to become a true master of your craft. You learn, you apply, you plateau, and then you teach. The teaching is the crucible.
The teaching is the crucible. I love that.
And it democratizes the whole concept of entrepreneurship, too. You don't need a supply chain. You don't need venture capital. You just need to reach back and pull the next person up the mountain.
Reach back and pull the next person up the mountain. That makes the ultimate startup feel incredibly noble, not just profitable.
Definitely.
But let's pivot a little bit, because I want to put on my skeptical hat again. I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a listener who's saying, okay, that's a beautiful philosophy. If I want to be a life coach or a fitness guru or a wrestling instructor, path one sounds great.
Right.
But I own a plumbing company, or I sell B2B accounting software, or I manufacture ergonomic office chairs. Like, I have a real physical business with overhead. I'm not going to write an ebook about my feelings, and I don't want to be an internet personality.
Yeah, they feel completely disconnected from the concept.
Exactly. They're thinking, does this entire expert model just exclude me?
And that is the exact mental block that keeps traditional business owners trapped in the hamster wheel of expensive advertising.
The hamster wheel.
Yeah. They hear the phrase information product or expert business, and they immediately categorize it as something entirely separate from their industry. They think, I sell a physical widget, I don't sell online courses.
Right.
But this brings us to the second type of expert business, which is arguably even more powerful than the first. This is where you use information products not as your primary business, but as the fuel to grow your existing company.
Okay, so the information isn't the main event, it's the engine.
Exactly. In this second model, your primary goal is still to sell your accounting software, or your plumbing services, or your office chairs. But instead of running standard, expensive ads to push those products onto a cold audience, you attach an expert information business to the very front end of your customer journey.
To the front end.
You use the information to acquire customers for your main business at a massive profit.
Okay, we really need to slow down and look at the primary case study Brunson uses to prove this,
Okay.
because the math behind it is genuinely mind-bending.
It's incredible.
The example is his own company, ClickFunnels. Now, for context for the listener, ClickFunnels is a SaaS company, software as a service. They provide software that helps people build websites and sales funnels. ClickFunnels became one of the fastest growing SaaS companies in the history of the internet. It scaled to hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. But the kicker, the thing that makes Silicon Valley veterans absolutely lose their minds, they did it with zero venture capital,
Nothing.
no startup backing, no seed rounds, no Series A.
Which, if you understand the tech world, is almost statistically impossible.
It's unheard of.
The standard operating procedure for a software startup is what they call the Valley of Death. You raise
Ooh-ah.
$20 million from VC firms, and then you basically just set that money on fire.
Setting it on fire, yeah.
You burn through it, paying for Facebook ads, Google AdWords, and sponsorships, just trying desperately to acquire users.
Right, because in a normal subscription business, the math is brutal. Like, let's say you sell a software subscription for $100 a month. But to convince someone to buy it, you have to spend $150 on Facebook ads just to get their attention and convert them. So on day one, when that customer signs up, you aren't making $100. You are negative $50. You are literally in the hole. You have to wait until month 2 just to break even, and you only start seeing a single dollar of profit in month 3, and that's assuming they don't cancel.
Right. That is your customer acquisition cost, or CAC.
Mm.
And because traditional SaaS companies have a really high CAC, they bleed cash for the first year or two.
Which is terrifying.
It is, and that's exactly why they need venture capital. They need a massive war chest to float all that initial ad spend before the monthly renewals finally catch up and turn a profit. It's just a terrifying game of attrition.
So here's where it gets really, really interesting. How did ClickFunnels survive without that VC war chest? If they didn't have millions of dollars sitting in the bank to float their ad spend, how on earth did they afford to acquire tens of thousands of users?
They did it by fundamentally changing the sequence of the transaction. They attached an information business to the front end.
The front end again. Okay.
Yeah. When their competitors and venture capitalists looked at ClickFunnels' financials, they were completely baffled. They couldn't compute the math because ClickFunnels' customer acquisition cost wasn't just low. It was, as Brunson puts it, better than free.
Hold on. Let's force an ELI 5 here. Explain, like, I'm 5. Getting paid to acquire a customer sounds like a literal typo in a spreadsheet. How does a customer acquisition cost become less than 0? Walk us through the exact sequence of how this machine operates.
Let's use real numbers to make it clear. In the traditional model, you spend $100 on an ad, you pitch your software directly, and you hope you get a $100 sign-up. You're at net zero, best case scenario.
Okay, simple enough.
In the expert model, you still spend $100 on an ad, but you do not pitch your software. You don't even mention it.
Wait, you don't mention the thing you're trying to sell?
Nope. Instead, the ad pitches an information product. Maybe it's a physical book, a deep dive masterclass, or a specialized training course that teaches a specific strategy. Let's say it's a course on how to architect the perfect online sales strategy.
Okay, so I'm a business owner. I see your ad. I'm struggling with sales, so I click and buy your course. Let's say the course costs $150.
Stop right there. Look at the math.
Okay.
You spent $100 on the ad. You just sold an info product to that person for $150.
Mm-hmm.
On the very first interaction with this customer, you have completely recouped your $100 ad spend, and you have made a $50 net profit.
Wow.
You have a customer who has proven they're willing to pull out their credit card, and you literally got paid $50 to find them.
Okay, I see where this is going. The advertising pays for itself. It's a self-liquidating offer, meaning the front-end product acts like a machine that eats $1 in ad spend and immediately spits out $1.50.
Precisely. And now comes the absolute masterstroke. You have this customer who just took your masterclass. They are fired up. They just learned all your brilliant strategies for building a sales funnel. And at the very end of the course, you say, hey, by the way, you can build all these funnels yourself from scratch, which takes a ton of coding and time. Or you can use the exact software I built to do it in 10 minutes. It's called ClickFunnels. Click here to start your trial.
Mind blown. Because the customer already paid for the info product and that info product covered the advertising costs entirely, the cost to acquire that user for the software is literally less than zero. You didn't pay to get them to the software. They paid you for the education, and the software is just the logical next step.
It fundamentally changes the physics of business growth. Your marketing budget ceases to be an expense. It becomes an infinite profit center.
An infinite profit center. That's wild.
If traditional companies are playing a game of who has the deepest pockets to survive the ad spend, this model plays a game of our customers finance our advertising on day one.
Yes.
If you put $1,000 into ads today and make $1,500 back tonight on the info products, tomorrow you can spend $1,500 on ads. The next day you can spend $2,000. Your ability to scale becomes completely untethered from outside capital.
The practical application of this for our listeners is just staggering, but let's pull this out of the software world and apply it to an everyday brick-and-mortar business because I want to make sure people see how universal this is.
Definitely. Let's do it.
Let's say you own a local, high-end gardening and landscaping store. You sell premium soils, rare plants, and expensive patio build-outs. The traditional way to market is to buy a billboard or run local Facebook ads saying, 10% off shovels this weekend.
Correct. A standard discount play.
You spend $500 on ads, you hope 50 people walk in, and you pray they buy enough shovels to cover the ad spend. It's stressful, and it's incredibly unpredictable.
And it commoditizes your business, too, because you're training the customer to only care about the discount.
Exactly. So let's apply the expert model. Instead of advertising a discount on shovels, you package your expertise. You create a $40 Saturday morning masterclass called How to Design a Drought-Resistant Backyard Oasis.
I love that.
You run $500 worth of ads promoting the class. 20 people sign up at $40 each. That's $800. You've already paid for your ads, and you have $300 in profit in your pocket.
And now you have 20 highly qualified, eager prospects sitting in your store for 2 hours.
Right. You spend 2 hours teaching them the exact philosophy of drought-resistant landscaping. You show them the diagrams, the soil layering techniques. And at the end of the class, what happens? They don't want to go to Home Depot to figure it out by themselves.
Of course not.
They look at you, the expert, and they say, can I just buy the exact soil and the exact plants you just showed us? And they walk out spending $500 each on your core products. Your cost to acquire those retail sales was less than zero. You got paid to get them in the door.
It is brilliant because it solves the ultimate choke point for every small business: cash flow for marketing. When your marketing pays for itself on day one, the friction of growth just disappears.
Which perfectly transitions us into the next phase of this framework. Brunson outlines 4 specific, powerful byproducts that occur when an existing business adopts this front-end expert process. It's not just about the math of the ad spend, it fundamentally changes the psychology of the entire operation.
Yeah, it shifts everything.
Let's dive into these 4 byproducts because they really crystallize why this is so remarkably effective.
Right, so the first byproduct is one of the most relieving things a business owner can experience. Complicated sales become easy.
Okay, complicated sales become easy. How?
And the engine behind this is a word that sounds a bit intense, but is incredibly accurate in this context: indoctrination.
Indoctrination. Yeah, that is a heavy word. It sounds a bit like a cult. But in this context, we're really just talking about deep philosophical education, right?
Exactly. We are talking about pre-framing the customer's worldview to match yours. Think about the friction of a cold sale. If you just walk up to a stranger and try to sell them a $5,000 consulting package or a complex piece of software or a high-end landscaping build, the friction is immense.
Oh, yeah. People put their guard up immediately.
Right. You have to spend hours explaining what it is, defending why it costs so much, and convincing them that it will actually work for them. You are basically fighting an uphill battle against their natural skepticism.
It's exhausting. You're constantly having to overcome objections like, why is this better than the other guy? Why do I need this feature?
But when you sell an information product first, that book or that course does all the heavy lifting for you. It educates the customer on your exact framework. It explains the problem they have in a way they've never heard before. It walks them through the entire philosophy behind your solution.
Okay, I see.
So by the time they finish reading your book or taking your masterclass, they are indoctrinated into your way of thinking. They understand why they need your core product before you have even made the offer.
So the sale becomes a natural conclusion rather than a high-pressure pitch. You aren't convincing them anymore. They're convincing themselves because they've adopted your framework. That makes total sense.
Which leads directly into byproduct number 2, expert positioning versus commodity. When you lead with your expertise, you completely and permanently escape the race to the bottom.
Oh, this is massive for anyone who deals with price shoppers. If you are a service provider, let's use a physical therapist or chiropractor as an example.
Perfect example.
If you are just marketing yourself as downtown chiropractic, you are a commodity. The customer is going to look at your website, look at the 5 other chiropractors in a 10-mile radius, and their only deciding factor is going to be who takes my insurance and who is the absolute cheapest.
Yeah, they don't value your specific skill. They just want a generic back crack.
Exactly. And competing on price is a miserable way to run a business. But let's apply the expert framework here. Imagine, instead of advertising a generic $29 introductory adjustment, you write a book called The Posture Cure: How to Eliminate Chronic Back Pain Without Surgery.
That sounds authoritative.
You run ads for the book, a prospect buys it, reads it, and learns about your highly specific methodology for realigning the spine.
And suddenly, you are no longer just a chiropractor in their eyes. You are the author.
Yeah.
You are the authority. You wrote the literal book on their specific pain point.
Exactly. And when they decide to book an appointment, price resistance vanishes. They aren't going to call the guy down the street who is $20 cheaper because that guy didn't write the posture cure.
Nope.
They will happily pay a premium out of pocket to see the established expert. All other cheaper options become completely irrelevant because the customer doesn't just want an adjustment anymore. They want your specific adjustment based on the philosophy they just paid to learn.
It's like a magic trick that just erases your competition. Okay, let's look at byproduct number 3, unlimited free customers. We touched on this with the ClickFunnels math and the self-liquidating offer, but I want to really dig into what this actually means for the valuation and scale of a business.
Let's do it.
If we look at this from a macroeconomic perspective, the ceiling of any traditional business is dictated entirely by its marketing budget.
Right.
If you have a budget of $5,000 a month and it costs you $50 to acquire a customer, you can only mathematically grow by 100 customers a month. That is your hard cap. If you want to grow faster, you have to go into debt or dilute your equity to get more ad money.
Your growth is literally held hostage by your cash reserves.
But if your front-end information product is covering the cost of the advertising, your customer acquisition cost is 0. And a company with a $0 acquisition cost is an unstoppable juggernaut.
It really is.
Your marketing budget becomes conceptually infinite. If every dollar you put into the advertising machine comes back to you immediately through the sale of the info product, your only limit is how fast you can deliver your core service. Your potential customer pool becomes truly unlimited because you never, ever have to turn off the ads.
That's the dream.
And furthermore, every single back-end sale you make of your core product is 100% pure profit margin.
Because the ad was already paid for by the book, the margins become unbelievable. And that leads right into the final consequence, byproduct number 4. Massive accelerated growth.
Right.
Because you aren't waiting for capital and you aren't waiting 60 days to break even on a subscription, you experience a compounding effect that traditional models simply cannot replicate.
It's a flywheel effect. You acquire customers faster because the ads fund themselves. Those customers are infinitely more loyal and easier to manage because they have been indoctrinated by your information products. And your profit margins are vastly higher because there is no acquisition debt eating into your back-end revenue. The velocity of the business increases exponentially.
You know, to tie all 4 of these byproducts together, I want to use a metaphor that I think really captures the shift in energy. It's like the difference between pushing a boulder up a steep hill versus standing at the bottom of the hill with a giant electromagnet.
Oh, I like where this is going. Break that down for us.
Well, traditional marketing, where you are just pitching your core product directly, is pushing the boulder. You are fighting gravity. You are sweating. You are spending massive amounts of cash. You are interrupting people's news feeds, waving your arms, screaming, please look at my software. Please buy my landscaping service. Please come to my chiropractic clinic.
Sounds exhausting.
It is. You are using brute force and high-pressure sales tactics to push that heavy boulder up the mountain, and the second you stop spending money, the boulder rolls right back down and crushes you.
Highly inefficient, exhausting, and, frankly, financially terrifying.
Exactly. But the expert model, putting your knowledge out front, is the electromagnet. You position yourself at the bottom of the hill. You publish the book, you teach the masterclass, you share your philosophy, you establish your authority first.
Yes.
And by doing that, you turn on the magnet. Suddenly, gravity is doing the work for you. You aren't pushing anymore. You are pulling. The customer reads the book, resonates with your message, and is naturally pulled toward your core business. You transition from a state of friction to a state of flow.
That is a phenomenal analogy.
Well,
It fundamentally shifts the power dynamic between the buyer and the seller, pushing versus pulling.
hmm.
When you are pushing, the customer has all the power. They can demand discounts, they can compare you to competitors. When you are pulling them through your expertise, you hold the power. They're coming to you, asking for permission to work with you, eager to implement the solutions you've educated them on.
And that is the golden takeaway for you listening today. If you have an existing business or you're planning to start one, you have to stop just trying to sell the core product. Step back, look at your industry. Create a front-end piece of education, like a masterclass, a short book, a comprehensive guide, something that explains the deep philosophy of why your core product is the only logical solution.
Exactly.
Sell that education first. Let it pay for your ads, and watch the friction completely evaporate from your main business.
So when we step back and distill this entire framework down to its essence, what does it really mean? It means that we have to stop viewing information merely as a product to be sold. Information is a profoundly powerful tool of influence.
Yes, it is the ultimate leverage. Whether you are walking path one, where you are turning your life lessons and your passion into a coaching or consulting business, creating that ultimate zero capital startup where your experience is your inventory.
Or whether you are walking path two, using that information as the ultimate marketing fuel to sell physical products, software, or professional services at a massive scale. The underlying truth of the architecture remains exactly the same. Positioning yourself as a contributing expert isn't an ego trip. It is the absolute mathematical shortcut to scale.
It completely bypasses the need to beg venture capitalists for funding. It shatters price resistance and pulls you out of the commodity trap. And perhaps most importantly, on a human level, it forces you to continually master your craft, allowing you to truly change the lives of the people you serve by leading them to a better result. You aren't just selling to them, you are educating them.
It really is a remarkable, elegant system. And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as we wrap up this deep dive. I want you to think about that one topic you naturally geek out over.
Oh, everyone has one.
You know the one. It's the thing you are constantly researching at 2 in the morning. The thing you can't stop talking about with your friends or your partner, even when you can literally see their eyes glazing over. The skill you've spent years quietly refining in the background of your life.
The thing you thought was just a quirky hobby.
Exactly. What if that exact passion, that very specific, hard-won, specialized knowledge is not just a hobby? What if it is actually the front door to your future empire? What if the struggles you've overcome in that area are the exact roadmap someone else is desperately searching for right now?
Oh, I love that challenge. What if the thing you do for fun, the thing you take for granted, is the exact thing someone else needs you to teach them? And what if stepping up to teach it is the secret to unlocking a business scale where you literally get paid to acquire your customers? It changes how you view everything you know.
It really does.
But of course, knowing what to sell and how the math works is only the first half of the equation. Now that you know the two vehicles for your expertise, the next critical step is actually finding and gathering the people who want to hear it. How do you find your tribe? So, next time we're diving into the psychology of exactly how you create your own mass movement from scratch. You won't want to miss it. See you then.
So what do the most powerful political revolutions, enduring world religions, and billion-dollar tech empires actually have in common?
Well, on the surface, you think absolutely nothing. Yeah.
Right, exactly. But, if you strip away the era, the technology, and the ideology, you are left with this startling realization.
Yeah, that they aren't just selling a better product or pitching a smarter idea.
Exactly. They are engineering cult-like mass movements. And today, you are going to learn their exact underground playbook.
Yeah, and in this deep dive, you are going to discover a really highly specific three-part framework for creating a mass movement.
Which is so fascinating to dig into.
It really is. We are going to look at the mechanics of how to embody a charismatic leader, how to build a future-based cause, and how to offer a completely new opportunity.
Right, and this matters deeply for anyone listening who is interested in business or entrepreneurship or even just understanding human behavior.
Oh, 100%. Because the difference between being a struggling expert and becoming a global phenomenon, well, it relies entirely on your ability to turn casual observers into true, dedicated fans. Fans who will eagerly pay for your advice and follow your direction.
That concept completely upends how we normally think about business,
Right?
right?
Oh, completely. It's a total paradigm shift.
Because when you look at the standard advice out there for entrepreneurs, or really anyone trying to share specialized knowledge, it is so incredibly clinical.
Yeah, it's all about, customer acquisition costs or finding product market fit.
Exactly. Or optimizing the features and benefits of a widget. It is this purely transactional view of human exchange, like,
Yeah.
you have a problem, I have a solution, give me $5.
Right, but the material we are diving into today fundamentally rejects that idea.
It really does.
Yeah.
It argues that if you truly want to make an impact, and yes, if you want to generate significant wealth or influence in the process, you have to stop acting like a vendor selling a commodity.
Yeah, you have to start acting like someone leading a crusade.
A crusade. I love that word for this.
It's a profound shift in identity. Because, information alone in our modern era is essentially worthless.
Because it's totally commoditized now.
Exactly. You can look up anything on the internet for free. The specialized knowledge sitting inside your head right now isn't enough to move people on its own.
Right. It's the skillful application of that information.
Yes, wrapped in a compelling narrative that actually changes lives. When you analyze history to see how massive changes occurred, there are always three distinct recurring patterns at play.
Okay, let's lay those out for the listener.
Sure. First, there is the emergence of a charismatic leader. Second, there is the creation of a future-based cause that is significantly larger than the individuals involved.
And the third.
Third, there is the introduction of a completely new vehicle for change.
So it's not just about having the best data. It's about mobilization.
Exactly. It's about moving people.
And what really strikes me is that this psychology doesn't just apply to historical figures on a grand stage. Like, if you were listening right now and you were trying to teach people how to get out of debt or, I don't know, train a rescue dog or write their first novel, you are engaging in this exact same process.
Yeah, you are trying to move human beings from a present state of pain to a future state of relief.
Right. But to do that, someone has to step up to the plate, which forces us to confront the very first pillar of this framework, the charismatic leader.
And this is immediately where the vast majority of people hit a massive, massive psychological wall.
Oh, the imposter syndrome.
Exactly. Human beings are, by nature, looking for direction. We are silently begging to be led.
We want a guide to show us the way through the uncertainty.
Right. But when someone realizes they have knowledge that could help others, their immediate internal response is almost always a crippling wave of imposter syndrome.
You hear a phrase like charismatic leader, and your brain instantly starts listing all your disqualifications.
You think, well, I don't have a PhD. I'm not a millionaire. I'm not the undisputed best in the world at this topic. Who am I to lead anyone, anywhere?
I feel that tension so much. It is that paralyzing assumption that unless you have reached the absolute undisputed pinnacle of a field, you have no right to open your mouth.
Yeah, it's the idea that you have to be the omniscient master on the mountaintop. But the framework offers a really liberating counter-argument to this.
It does. It completely deconstructs the myth of the omniscient expert.
It really does. You do not need to be the greatest in the world. You simply need to be what is mechanically defined as one chapter ahead of the people you are trying to help.
One chapter ahead. I love that phrasing.
It's so practical. And there is a brilliant historical illustration of this involving Frank Abago. You might know him as the infamous con artist whose life was turned into the movie Catch Me If You Can.
Oh, right. The guy who managed to impersonate an airline pilot, a doctor, and a lawyer.
Exactly, that guy. But there is a specific lesser-known chapter of his life that perfectly highlights this principle.
What did he do?
Well, during his string of impersonations, Abanyale somehow managed to secure a job as a sociology teaching assistant at Brigham Young University.
Wait, really? At a major university?
Yes. And he actually taught this college-level sociology class for an entire semester. Now, keep in mind, he had absolutely no formal background in sociology. He wasn't a scholar.
I mean, obviously not.
Right. So when the authorities finally caught up with him, they were baffled by this specific stunt. They asked him, how in the world did you manage to stand in front of a room full of college students and teach a complex subject that you knew nothing about?
Hey, what did he say?
His answer was incredibly revealing. He said, all I had to do was read one chapter ahead of the students.
Okay, wait, I have to stop you there.
Yeah.
Because while that is a fantastic story, it brings up a huge ethical red flag.
I know. It's a
Yeah.
provocative example.
Oh, because Frank Abagnale was literally a criminal. He was faking it.
Oh, right.
So if we're telling someone who wants to start legitimate business or build a genuine movement that they only need to be one chapter ahead, aren't we basically telling them to be con artists?
Yeah, doesn't mean we are faking it.
Right. Aren't we
Yeah.
just encouraging people to fake it until they make it?
That is the exact friction point this concept creates, and it is crucial to unpack the difference here. Abagnale was fabricating his credentials and his identity. He was lying about who he was.
Right.
But the mechanical truth of why his teaching was effective had nothing to do with the lie. It had to do with proximity.
Proximity, how do you mean?
Think about the psychology of learning. Your audience consists of people who are at chapter 1 of their journey. They are struggling with the absolute basics.
So good. Yeah.
They don't need someone who is at chapter 50. In fact, someone who is at chapter 50 might actually be a terrible teacher for them because of a psychological phenomenon known as the curse of knowledge.
Oh, where you know too much to explain it simply.
Exactly. When you become an absolute master at something, you literally forget what it feels like to not know it. You skip steps. You use jargon. You assume foundational knowledge that a beginner just doesn't have.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit more. It's like a high school senior tutoring a freshman in algebra, right?
That's a perfect analogy.
The senior doesn't need a doctorate in theoretical mathematics to help that freshman pass tomorrow's test. They just need to have survived the exact same confusing hallway the freshman is walking down right now.
Exactly. The senior is actually the better guide because the struggle is still fresh.
Yeah, they remember which textbook chapter makes no sense, and they remember the specific trick that helped them understand the equation just a couple of years ago. A college professor might just talk entirely over the freshman's head.
That is the exact mechanism. You are not faking knowledge. You're sharing the genuine, intermediate results you have actually achieved.
It's just a reframe of how we view our own lived experience.
Right. Consider the origin of the software company ClickFunnels. The founder didn't start out as a world-renowned software CEO or a billionaire marketing guru.
What was he doing?
He was just a college kid on spring break who decided he wanted to build a potato gun.
A potato gun? That's hilarious.
Yeah, he had no idea how to do it, so he went out and researched it. He learned about PVC pipe safety, barrel-to-chamber volume ratios, the right types of propellants.
Oh, wow. He really went deep.
He acquired the knowledge, he physically built the potato gun, and he got the result. At that moment, he was genuinely one chapter ahead of anyone who had never built a potato gun but wanted to.
So he didn't have to fake being a ballistics engineer.
Exactly. He just had to accurately share the steps he took to get his specific result. That is authentic leadership.
That completely reframes the imposter syndrome.
Right.
The knowledge is real, the result is real. It's just a matter of owning exactly where you are in the journey.
Right. You aren't claiming to be the ultimate guru.
You are just claiming to be the guide who successfully navigated the path right in front of them. So practical takeaway time, if someone accepts this, if they accept they are one chapter ahead, how do they practically step into that role?
Well, the psychology of projecting that leadership requires 2 specific disciplines. First, you must transparently live the life your audience wishes they could live.
And live is the key word here, right?
It is. It's about demonstrating the gap between their current reality and your current reality. This tension is what moves human beings to action.
So you have to show them where you came from.
Yes, which proves you intimately understand their current pain. And then you show them where you are now, which proves your methods actually work. If you don't show both, they will remain stagnant.
You have to be vulnerable about your flaws and your messy backstory while simultaneously showcasing the triumph of your current methods.
Exactly. It's the hero's journey. You have to show the scar tissue, not just the trophy.
I love that. Show the scar tissue. But there is a second discipline required here, and it's something that goes against a lot of modern self-help advice.
What's that?
Well, we always hear about the importance of self-confidence. Just be confident. But the psychological framework for mass movements argues that confidence is actually too weak of an emotion to mobilize people.
That's right. You don't need confidence. You need absolute certainty. Certainty is the operative word.
Why is certainty so much better than confidence?
Think about the dynamics of a crowded room where an emergency happens. People are confused, scared, and looking around.
Yeah, it's chaos.
If someone stands up and says, I'm fairly confident we should go out the back door, they might get a few followers.
Probably not many.
But if someone stands up and says, with unshakable conviction, the exit is this way, follow me right now, human nature dictates that the crowd will instantly gravitate toward that certainty.
Oh, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
We are biologically wired to follow the person who eliminates ambiguity.
Exactly. Certainty is what draws people in.
But how do you manufacture that certainty? If you are genuinely just starting out, and you are honestly only one chapter ahead, you probably aren't certain.
You probably have a ton of doubts, yeah.
Right, you have doubts about your message or your ability to lead. How do you cross the bridge from nervous beginner to someone radiating absolute certainty?
You forge it through daily repetition. The most crucial practical step for an emerging leader is that you must publish your thoughts daily.
Like a podcast, a blog, a video channel.
The medium doesn't matter, but the frequency does. And here is the counterintuitive psychological truth about daily publishing. When you first start doing this, you are not doing it for your audience.
You likely don't even have an audience yet.
Exactly. You are doing it entirely for yourself.
You are doing it to find your own voice.
Precisely. You are testing your ideas out loud in the real world. You are figuring out which concepts resonate deeply within you, what stories feel natural to tell, and what arguments you can logically defend against criticism.
It's like a crucible.
It really is. Over time, that daily friction burns away the weak ideas and solidifies your core message. You stop wondering if your perspective matters, and you become fundamentally convicted by it.
And that internal conviction translates externally as the magnetic force we call charisma.
Spot on.
Okay, so let's say you do the work. You beat back the imposter syndrome. You embrace being one chapter ahead. You share your journey transparently. And you publish daily until you forge this ironclad certainty. You are a leader.
You've got the foundation.
But a leader with a boring message is just someone shouting into the void. This seems to be where a lot of well-meaning experts fail. They have the charisma, but their message put people to sleep.
Which brings us to the necessity of evaluating your message through what is called the prolific index.
The prolific index. Let's break that down.
Having a voice is useless if that voice is just echoing what everyone else is already saying. The prolific index is a conceptual spectrum that maps out human attention.
Okay, what's on the far left side?
On the far left side of this spectrum, you have the mainstream. This is where traditional, widely accepted advice lives. It is common sense. It is the status quo.
And from a business perspective, the mainstream is a dead zone. If you are teaching mainstream advice, nobody's going to pay you for it, and nobody's going to join a movement for it because they can get it anywhere for free.
Right. It lacks the friction required to generate heat. You make no money there.
Exactly. So recognizing that the mainstream is unprofitable and uninspiring, many aspiring leaders overcorrect.
They swing the pendulum violently to the far right side of the spectrum, entering what is known as the crazy zone.
The crazy zone. I love that term.
The crazy zone is populated by ideas that are so radical, so fundamentally detached from normal human behavior or logic, that they can never achieve mass adoption.
You might recruit a microscopic fringe group, but you cannot build a sustainable large-scale movement there. I want to look at a tangible example of this because the conceptual spectrum is a bit abstract. Let's apply the prolific index to something universal, like the weight loss industry.
Great example.
If we look at the far left, the mainstream, that's the traditional government food pyramid. It's the advice to eat less and exercise more.
It's logically sound, it's safe, but no one is paying a premium for that revolutionary insight. It doesn't spark a crusade.
Exactly. Now, on the absolute opposite end of the spectrum, the crazy zone, I remember reading about a documentary a few years ago called Eat the Sun.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The entire premise was a group of people who believed they could completely stop eating physical food and instead just gaze directly into the sun to absorb their daily caloric needs through photosynthesis.
It is a profound example of the crazy zone.
It's beyond crazy. You stare at the sun instead of having lunch. Now, if you are a charismatic leader pitching that, you might get a few deeply eccentric people to try it for a week.
Right, but nobody is going to permanently give up chewing food.
And no one is going to build a billion-dollar empire teaching people how to photosynthesize. It violates too many core human instincts. So if the mainstream is too boring to capture attention and the crazy zone is too radical to sustain it, where is the operational sweet spot?
You have to engineer your message to sit right in the middle. This is the prolific zone.
The prolific zone.
Yes. This is where your idea is weird enough to be intensely fascinating, but backed by enough logic, science, or observable results to be credible.
Let's continue the weight loss example.
The perfect illustration of the prolific zone is Dave Asprey and the creation of bulletproof coffee.
Oh, putting a massive chunk of butter into your morning coffee.
Exactly. Analyze the psychology of that idea when you first hear it. Wait, I'm supposed to put a stick of grass-fed butter in my coffee to lose weight.
It immediately jars you.
It captures your attention precisely because it violently contradicts the mainstream low-fat dietary advice we've been fed for decades.
But crucially, it is not as biologically insane as staring at the sun and never eating again.
Right. And when Asprey backs it up with the logic of healthy fats, metabolic ketosis, and sustained brain energy, the idea suddenly crosses the threshold from crazy to incredibly compelling.
It sits perfectly in the prolific zone. And because of that positioning, it birthed a massive movement and a multi-million-dollar empire.
What's fascinating here is that your message must cause polarity.
Wait, polarity. So there's a hidden cost to operating in a prolific zone, isn't there? Because the moment you tell people to put butter in their coffee, the mainstream nutritionists are going to attack you.
They are going to call you irresponsible.
It seems like the prolific zone requires you to take a stance that is inherently polarizing. And as an entrepreneur, aren't we taught to try and please as many people as possible? Doesn't alienating the mainstream hurt your growth?
This is a fundamental misunderstanding of how mass movements work. Neutrality is the absolute enemy of a movement. Neutrality is boring.
So you shouldn't try to please everyone.
People do not rally around the middle of the road. They rally around a distinct, defined point of view. If you engineer your message to please everyone, you will inspire no one. Polarity is not a negative side effect of your movement. It is the actual engine that drives it.
So you have to be willing to upset the status quo.
You have to embrace it. By planting your flag in the prolific zone, you are deliberately alienating the mainstream. But in that exact same motion, you are creating a brilliant, undeniable beacon for your true fans.
It's a psychological filter.
It is. The framework warns about this explicitly. You have to mentally prepare yourself for the reality that for every 100 true devoted fans you attract by being prolific, you are going to generate one incredibly loud, aggressive hater.
And human nature dictates that the one hater is going to feel 10 times louder than the 100 fans cheering you on.
Who ways?
That's where the daily publishing and the certainty we talked about earlier come in. If you haven't forged that internal certainty, the first time someone from the mainstream attacks your prolific zone idea, you are going to flinch.
You'll water down your message, retreat to the safety of the mainstream, and your movement will instantly die.
Here's where it gets really interesting for you listening right now. If you aren't turning anyone off, you probably aren't turning anyone on either. Polarity is the price of admission for building deep loyalty. Find your sweet spot between the mainstream and the crazy zone.
Precisely.
Okay, this is a heavy realization. We have a charismatic leader. They are one chapter ahead. They have absolute certainty, and they are broadcasting a highly polarized message from the prolific zone.
We have the ingredients.
But how do they actually structure their communication to make people stay? What are the psychological levers you pull to bond an audience to you once you have their attention?
This brings us to what I think is the most potent and, frankly, somewhat terrifying psychological tool in this entire framework. It is the dark art of one-sentence persuasion.
One-sentence persuasion. That sounds intense.
It is arguably one of the most profound distillations of human behavioral drivers ever written. The framework relies heavily on a single sentence crafted by Blair Warren to explain the exact mechanic of how a leader bonds with an audience on an emotional level.
What is the sentence?
The sentence is this: people will do anything for those who encourage their dreams, justify their failures, allay their fears, confirm their suspicions, and help them throw rocks at their enemies.
Wow. That sentence is incredibly dense. I want to slow down and practically dissect every single clause of that, because every piece of it is a masterclass in empathy and human influence.
Let's do it.
Let's start with the first trigger. Encourage their dreams. Why is that so powerful?
Because the default state of society is discouragement. Think about the well-meaning people in our lives, our parents, our teachers, our peers. Often, out of a misplaced sense of protection, they discourage our biggest dreams.
They tell us to be realistic, to play it safe, to get a secure job.
Exactly. And over a lifetime, that constant friction grinds down our belief in what is possible. So when a stranger steps onto the stage, a leader, and genuinely validates and encourages those dormant dreams, that leader instantly assumes immense psychological power.
They become an oasis in a desert of realism.
Beautifully put.
That makes sense. It's the relief of finally being believed in.
Yeah.
The second trigger is even more interesting to me. Justify their failures.
This one is huge.
Because when someone seeks out an expert, whether they want to start a business, lose weight, or save their marriage, it is almost guaranteed that they have tried to solve this problem before, and they have failed. They are carrying a massive amount of shame and self-blame.
And that shame is a barrier to action. People have tried and failed before you met them. If you approach an audience and imply even subtly that they haven't succeeded because they are lazy or not smart enough or lack discipline, you will immediately trigger their defensive walls. You have lost them.
So how do you avoid that?
To bond with them, you must lift the burden of blame off their shoulders. You must justify their past failures by shifting the blame onto the old, flawed systems they were using. You take the blame off their shoulders and place it on their past opportunities.
It's the classic diet industry maneuver, right? You don't say you didn't lose weight because you couldn't stop eating cake.
No, never.
You say, it is not your fault you didn't lose weight. The food industry engineered highly addictive processed sugars, and the fitness industry sold you a flawed calorie counting model designed to keep you trapped in a cycle of dependency.
Exactly. Suddenly the listener exhales. They aren't broken. The system was broken. By shifting the blame to the past opportunity, you create a blank slate for them to try your new vehicle without the baggage of past shame.
You're granting them absolution, which leads directly to the third trigger: allay their fears.
Right, because once they are willing to try again, their natural fear of a repeated failure will spike. Your job is to provide the roadmap, the proof of concept, and the support system that mathematically demonstrates why this time the outcome will be different. You are building a psychological safety net.
Then we hit the fourth trigger: confirm their suspicions. There was something so deeply satisfying about being told we were right all along.
It is a massive ego stroke. We all harbor quiet suspicions about the world. We suspect the game is rigged. We suspect the wealthy have secret tax strategies. We suspect the medical industry prefers treating symptoms over curing diseases.
Yeah, we all have those thoughts.
When a leader confidently stands up and says, "You always suspected the system was designed to keep you broke. Well, you were right, and I'm going to show you exactly how they do it," it creates an intoxicating bond.
Because confirming a suspicion makes the follower feel intelligent and perceptive.
Exactly. And they naturally project immense loyalty onto the person who validated their intellect.
And then we arrive at the fifth and final element of the sentence. And this is where I really struggle with the morality of this framework.
Let's hear it.
Help them throw rocks at their enemies. So what does this all mean when we talk about throwing rocks at their enemies? That sounds incredibly toxic. It sounds like the literal definition of radicalization. How does a positive entrepreneur do this without just spreading hate and tribalism?
It is a vital pushback, and it requires a very careful understanding of human psychology. And I want to be really clear here as we discuss this. The author uses highly charged historical and political examples from modern presidential campaigns all the way to Jesus Christ and Adolf Hitler to illustrate the mechanical blueprints of mass movements.
Right, and to be clear to our listeners, we are not taking sides or endorsing any political or historical ideologies whatsoever. We are simply unpacking the author's argument that all effective movements, for good or evil, rely on a charismatic leader painting a compelling vision of the future.
Exactly. It is an undeniable historical fact that this exact mechanical blueprint has been used maliciously by cult leaders and dictators to bond populations against human scapegoats. The mechanics of human mobilization are entirely neutral. It's totally agnostic to morality.
Wait, it's just a tool.
But in the context of building an ethical business or a positive entrepreneurial movement, the enemy you are throwing rocks at does not have to be and never should be a human being.
Okay, so if the enemy isn't a person, what is it?
The enemy is a concept. It is an outdated system. It is a corrupt industry standard. It is a toxic mindset that is holding your audience captive.
Can you give an example?
Let's go back to Dave Asprey and Bulletproof Coffee. He didn't rally his audience to hate specific nutritionists. The enemy he threw rocks at was the sluggish, outdated, low-fat dietary dogma that kept people feeling chronically tired and hungry. He demonized the idea of a carbohydrate-heavy breakfast.
Okay, I see. By defining that conceptual enemy, he bonded his community. It creates an incredibly powerful us versus them dynamic, which is the fastest way to bond a community.
Exactly. Human beings are deeply tribal, and we naturally seek out allies who are willing to fight the same obstacles we are facing. When you, as the leader, pick up a rock and throw it at the conceptual enemy that has been causing your audience pain, you transcend the vendor-customer relationship. You become comrades in arms.
That completely changes the context.
Mhm.
You aren't attacking people, you are attacking the obstacle.
Yes.
So, practical takeaway, audit your own messaging. Are you confirming your audience's suspicions? Are you actively taking the blame for their past failures off their backs so they're open to trying your new vehicle? Have you clearly identified the invisible conceptual enemy that is holding them back, and are you inviting them to throw rocks at it with you?
If you are missing these emotional triggers, you are going to struggle to create true believers. Emotion is the glue.
But even with a charismatic leader and deeply persuasive messaging, human attention is fickle. A leader alone isn't enough to sustain a movement over the long term, right?
No, people eventually get bored. This requires us to build the second major pillar of the framework, the cause. You have to build what the framework cleverly refers to as your culture.
Culture. I see
Huh?
what they did there. A leader isn't enough. You need a future-based cause. People have an innate craving to plug into something significantly bigger than themselves.
Exactly. If you are just following a person, what happens if that person stumbles? What happens if they retire? The movement collapses.
But if the person is merely the conduit for a massive future-based cause, the movement becomes self-sustaining. You must bring people to higher ground by giving them an intense hope for the future.
Drawing on Eric Hoffer's seminal work, The True Believer, we see a profound psychological insight. Fear of the future causes people to lean against and cling to their present reality, no matter how painful that reality might be. But faith in the future renders people perceptive to change.
It reminds me of that quote from Star Wars, Rogue One, "Rebellions are built on hope." Without that vision of the future, they will simply cling to their current suffering, because at least it is familiar territory.
All mass movements, at their absolute core, are built on hope.
So how do we move from the abstract concept of hope to the actual mechanical engineering of a culture? The framework outlines 3 very specific steps to build this cause, right?
Yes, and the
Okay.
first one is fascinating. It's called creating a 4-minute mile.
Like the running record.
Exactly. It refers to the famous story of Roger Bannister. For decades, the global athletic and medical communities believed it was physically impossible for a human being to run a mile in under 4 minutes. It was considered a biological limit.
But then Bannister finally broke it.
He did. And the truly fascinating part is what happened next. Almost immediately after he proved it could be done, dozens of other runners began breaking the 4-minute mile as well.
Because the physical barrier was never the actual problem. It was a mental barrier.
Right. Once Bannister provided the undeniable proof of concept, the collective belief system of the entire running world shifted. In your movement, you must establish your own 4-minute mile.
Which is an achievement you unlock that proves to them it's possible.
Yes. You provide the ultimate proof of concept. And once you do, your primary focus shifts entirely to helping your followers break their 4-minute miles. When your audience starts seeing their peers achieving the impossible, the movement accelerates exponentially.
It creates a feedback loop of belief. The second step in building the cause is about creating a new identity. And this is something I see businesses mess up constantly. Let them self-identify with an I am statement.
Yes, when someone joins your movement, they're symbolically leaving their past, failed self behind. They need a new identity to step into.
And there's a very practical, crucial warning here, right?
Mhm.
Do not name your community after yourself.
The framework uses the example of an entrepreneurial couple, Brandon and Kaylin Poulin. They started a fitness company and initially called it Tool Time Trainer, based on Kaylin's maiden name, Tool.
Okay, Tool Time Trainer.
They built a decent following, but they struggled to build a rabid, deeply connected culture.
Well, of course they did, because it violates the psychology of identity. If I am a customer, I can't wake up in the morning, look in the mirror, and say, I'm a tool. That means nothing to me. It doesn't describe who I am. It just describes the person I bought a product from.
Exactly. Your community needs a name that allows the follower to adopt it as their own new identity. The founder of ClickFunnels realized this when he named his community Funnel Hackers.
Oh, I see. A customer can proudly adopt that identity.
Yeah.
They can say, I am a funnel hacker. It instantly communicates a shared set of values and a shared mission.
It is the exact same psychology as someone saying, I am a Mac versus I am a C, or someone calling themselves a CrossFitter. It gives them a tribe to belong to, and it separates them from the outside world.
Which leads perfectly into the third step of building the cause, creating a title of liberty. What exactly is this?
A title of liberty is essentially a formalized manifesto or a rallying call. It is codified into a physical document, a digital graphic, or a video that explicitly states who your tribe is, what core beliefs you stand for, why you are fundamentally different from the mainstream, and critically, who or what you are collectively fighting against.
It takes that us versus them dynamic we discussed earlier and carves it into stone.
The actual text of the Funnel Hacker Manifesto is a perfect example of this. It doesn't talk about software features. It says things like, we define our own destiny, we create our own luck, we bootstrap, we wage guerrilla war against the big brands, and we win.
Wow, it is absolutely dripping with defiance and identity. If you are a scrappy, independent entrepreneur reading that, your blood starts pumping. You want to march under that banner.
And conversely, if you are a risk-averse corporate middle manager, you probably read that and think it sounds ridiculous.
And that polarization is exactly the point. The manifesto acts as an incredibly powerful electromagnet. It intensely attracts the true believers who share your worldview, and it actively repels everyone who doesn't belong in your movement.
Exactly.
Okay, so we have assembled a massive amount of psychological infrastructure. We have a charismatic, polarizing leader who is one chapter ahead. We have bonded the audience using deep persuasion triggers. We have built a future-based cause with a 4-minute mile, a new identity, and a rallying manifesto. We have a mobilized army.
The stage is fully set.
But what are we actually handing them? What is the tangible thing that is going to take them to this promised future? This brings us to the third and final pillar of the framework. And according to the material, this is the single most important yet least understood piece of the entire puzzle: the new opportunity.
This is where the vast majority of intelligent, well-meaning experts completely fail. The fundamental rule of creating a mass movement is that you cannot offer your audience an improvement to an existing system. You must offer them a completely new opportunity, the vehicle of change.
I really struggled with this concept at first, because if you have a product or a service that genuinely improves someone's life, if it makes an existing process 10% faster or 20% cheaper, why isn't that enough? Why is an improvement offer the kiss of death for a movement?
To understand this, we have to look at the psychology of status and ego.
Mm.
Drawing again on Eric Hoffer, people who are looking for profound change do not want to fix their cherished self. They actually want to completely discard their unwanted self.
Discard the unwanted self.
Yes. When you offer someone an improvement program, you are implicitly telling them two deeply painful things. First, you're telling them they are broken and require fixing.
Ouch.
Second, and more importantly, you are forcing them to acknowledge all their past failures within that existing system. If they have tried to lose weight on a calorie-counting diet 5 times and failed, and you come along and offer an improved calorie-counting diet, their brain immediately associates your offer with their past shame.
They think, I've tried improving this way before and I failed. Why will this time be any different? I just don't have the discipline. An improvement offer threatens their status.
But a new opportunity bypasses all of that baggage. It offers a completely clean slate. A new opportunity says, the reason you failed in the past isn't because you lack discipline or intelligence. The reason you failed is because you were operating in the wrong vehicle entirely. The old system was fundamentally flawed. Here is a completely new vehicle.
When you do that, you remove the fear of failure. Because even if they fail at this new opportunity, it doesn't reflect poorly on their past attempts. It is a status-preserving pivot. Let's look at historical and business examples of this because it is so vital.
The framework points out that when Jesus Christ emerged, he didn't offer a slightly optimized 10-point improvement plan for how to better follow the exhaustive, rigid rules of Moses' law. He offered a completely new covenant. The rules of the old vehicle no longer applied.
Or, to look at modern business, look at Steve Jobs and the launch of the iPod. The dominant vehicle for portable music at the time was the Sony Walkman. Jobs didn't walk out onto the stage in a black turtleneck and say, we have engineered a slightly better tape deck that spins 5% faster and skips 10% less.
That would be an improvement offer. Nobody would have cared.
Instead, he said, here is 1,000 songs in your pocket. He introduced a completely new vehicle for listening to music that rendered the entire concept of the Walkman obsolete.
It is the ultimate pivot. You aren't asking them to work harder in a broken system. You are inviting them to step into a new paradigm.
Wait, so let me see if I get this. Think of it like a car that keeps breaking down on your commute to work. Week after week, you are stranded on the side of the highway, popping the hood, getting grease on your hands.
We've all been there.
If a mechanic pulls over and offers to sell you a slightly better wrench, an ergonomic wrench made of titanium, so that you can fix your engine 10% faster next time it breaks, you aren't going to be excited. That is an improvement offer. It still relies on you doing the hard, painful work inside a fundamentally broken system. You don't want the mechanic to offer you a better wrench so you can keep fixing it.
No, of course not.
But if that mechanic pulls over and says, hey, stop trying to fix that old clunker. It was a lost cause. Hand me the keys. Here are the keys to a completely new, incredibly reliable car. Just get in and drive.
Yeah.
You take that deal in a heartbeat. You want the mechanic to hand you the keys to a completely new car. You don't want a better tool to fix the old misery. You want a completely new vehicle that bypasses the misery entirely.
That is a perfect distillation of the opportunity switch. You are moving your followers out of their old, failed vehicle and placing them into your new, superior vehicle. But recognizing the power of a new opportunity is only half the battle. How do you actually build this?
Yeah, the framework gives a highly specific, step-by-step roadmap for how an entrepreneur can actually build and validate this new vehicle from absolute scratch.
And the roadmap starts with assembling a small, dedicated beta test group. Find a beta test group. And this is the step that makes a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs incredibly uncomfortable. Step 2 of this process mandates that you must work for free initially.
Work for free?
Yes. When you launch your beta group, your goal is absolutely not to make money. Your goal is to prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that your new vehicle actually works and to get case studies. You are harvesting undeniable case studies, testimonials, and tangible results. The success stories you generate for free in this beta group will become the foundational marketing fuel that drives the rest of your empire.
That is a tough pill to swallow for someone who wants to monetize immediately. But the logic is sound. You need the 4-minute mile proof before you can charge a premium. But before you even start teaching this beta group, you have to ensure that your new vehicle is actually solving the right problem. Which brings us to step 3, run an ask campaign.
This is a technique credited to marketers Frank Kern and Ed Dale, and its power lies in its deceptive simplicity. You send out a single one-question survey to your prospective beta group. The question is essentially, what is your #1 biggest challenge with X?
Just one question. But the genius isn't just in the asking, it's in how you analyze the answers. Because when people answer that question, they usually give you a surface-level symptomatic complaint.
Exactly. You are digging for the core emotional struggles, not the superficial symptoms. The framework advises that when you read their responses, you must internally perform the 5 whys exercise. You have to ask why, repeatedly, to drill down to the bedrock emotional desire, which is almost inevitably tied to a deep human need for elevated status, deeper love, or security.
Let's role-play this, because the 5 whys exercise is so illuminating. Let's say I send out an ask campaign about fitness, and a respondent says, my #1 challenge is that I want to lose 20 pounds.
So you ask, why do you want to lose 20 pounds?
Because I want to be healthier.
Why is being healthier suddenly so important to you right now?
Because I have 3 young kids, and I want to be able to keep up with them.
Why is keeping up with them a struggle?
Because by 5:00 p.m. every day, I am completely exhausted, I have no energy to play, and I end up putting them in front of the TV.
And why does that bother you?
Because it makes me feel like a lazy, neglectful parent. Boom. There it is. We just hit the bedrock.
Right. The core emotional desire has absolutely nothing to do with fitting into smaller jeans or hitting a number on a scale. It is entirely about the deep, agonizing desire for the love and status of being a present, active, good parent.
If you design your new opportunity around losing 20 pounds, you are just selling another boring diet. But if you design your new opportunity as a vehicle to reclaim your evening energy and become the hero your kids deserve, you have tapped into a primal emotional nerve. You aren't selling fitness anymore. You are selling redemption.
That is the power of the Ask campaign. It ensures your vehicle is tailored to their exact desires. Once you have gathered enough responses and drilled down to these core emotional needs, you identify the 8 to 10 most common agonizing struggles your audience is facing. Those specific struggles literally become the syllabus. They become the module titles for the 4th and final step of the roadmap, delivering a 6-week opportunity switch masterclass to your beta test group.
Why specifically 6 weeks?
It is the psychological sweet spot. If a program is shorter than 6 weeks, people often perceive it as lightweight or lacking substantial value. They don't feel they had enough time to truly transform. If it stretches longer than 6 weeks, human nature takes over, people lose momentum, life gets in the way, and completion rates plummet. 6 weeks is exactly enough time to break old habits, establish a new identity, and deliver a tangible result before fatigue sets in.
So you take this beta group, you guide them through this 6-week opportunity switch for free, you solve their core emotional problems, you get them the results, and suddenly the theoretical is made real. You have a proven, battle-tested new opportunity. You have real success stories. You have your 4-minute miles. You are now fully equipped to take this movement to the masses.
And that completely closes the loop on the architecture of the movement. We have traversed the entire psychological landscape.
So if we step all the way back and look at the massive blueprint we just laid out, how do we synthesize this? We've covered the charismatic leader, the future-based cause, and the mechanics of the new opportunity. What is the grand overriding takeaway for the listener who wants to apply this to their life today?
The ultimate synthesis is this. At its core, creating a mass movement isn't about having the highest IQ or the most polished corporate product on the market. It is essentially an act of modern alchemy. It is about becoming a confident, transparent guide who says, I understand your past failures, I have the key to a completely new vehicle, and together we are going to adopt a new identity and step into a better future. It is the profound foundational shift from simply selling a commodity to leading a genuine crusade.
From a commodity to a crusade. That is a heavy, incredibly empowering shift in perspective. But here is the massive catch for you, listening right now. Now that you have your leader, your cause, and your new opportunity, how do you actually bypass a stranger's natural, hardened skepticism so completely that they have no choice but to believe you and buy in?
That requires a very specific type of storytelling. That is the magic of the Epiphany Bridge.
And understanding how to build that bridge is exactly what you'll need to explore as you dive into the next chapter.
It is where the deep emotion we discussed today finally meets the logic of belief.
Exactly. So the next time you find yourself trying to sell a slightly better wrench to someone who is stranded and miserable on the side of the highway, stop, take a step back, and ask yourself, are you just offering them a painful improvement to a broken system, or are you finally ready to hand them the keys to a completely new car?
You really don't have to be like the smartest person in the room or born with some kind of magical magnetic aura to build a fiercely loyal following. You literally just need to be one chapter ahead.
Right. It completely dismantles that whole pedestal we put leaders on, doesn't it?
It really does.
Because we always assume you need this 20-year resume to lead anyone. But really, you just need to have survived the exact problem that your audience is, currently facing.
And that is exactly what we are getting into today. Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. We are breaking down the exact mechanics of charisma.
Yeah.
Because it's not magic, right?
Right along.
It's not something you are just genetically gifted with. It's actually a repeatable psychological framework. So today, we're exploring the core concepts from the charismatic leader and attractive character section of our source material expert secrets.
Yeah, and for anyone listening who's interested in business, entrepreneurship, or just making a real impact,
Yeah.
you're going to learn how to transition from being a student of a topic into a leader who can actually spark a mass movement, simply by bridging that gap between your past struggles and your current success.
Okay, so let's unpack this from the very beginning. Because the whole thing starts with this concept of the natural evolution of an expert. It begins with the personal growth, right?
Exactly. You find a topic and you just get obsessed.
Yeah, you geek out on it. You're reading all the books, consuming the content, studying the examples. You are a student gathering information.
Right. And think about the underlying drive there. Like, we all have something special inside us, something that we want to master.
Yeah.
Information is this powerful tool, but gathering it, that's only the first phase.
The consumer phase.
Exactly. Eventually, if you are just consuming and growing personally, you hit a ceiling. I mean, no matter how much personal development you do, there is a point where you can no longer progress internally. Your mind just gets saturated.
And that's the pivot point. Like, the only way to continue to grow isn't to learn more, but to shift your focus from personal growth to contribution. You have to start helping others.
And that shift, that exact moment from growth to contribution, that is when a leader is born. It's when you take the knowledge that served you and you turn around and use it to serve others.
But, and this is a big but, that transition is where most people completely freeze up.
Oh, 100%. It's terrifying.
Right, because here is where the mental roadblock hits for so many of us. And I know you listening right now have probably felt this. It's imposter syndrome.
The biggest killer of movements. Yeah.
Exactly. I look at this and think, wait, how can I lead if I don't know everything? I don't have a PhD. I haven't been doing this for 20 years. Like, if I stand up and say, follow me, someone is going to point and call me a total fraud.
That is by far the most common fear. But the text addresses this directly with a great scenario. Imagine a guy who's asked to teach a class, right? And he is terrified because he knows he doesn't know everything about the subject.
And not the ultimate master.
Right. But then he quickly realizes this fundamental truth about teaching. He says, wait, all I have to do is read one chapter ahead of the students.
Oh, man. That line is just so freeing. You just have to be one chapter ahead.
It changes everything.
It does. Like, you don't need to be this theoretical cartographer who has mapped every single inch of the entire mountain. You just need to be the guide who walked the trail yesterday.
Yeah, and now you're just dropping a rope down for the next person.
Exactly. You're just pulling up the person who is a few steps behind you.
I love that mountain analogy, but let's push it even further. Because why is the person who is only one chapter ahead actually a better teacher than the ultimate master?
Wait, a better teacher?
Yeah, it's because of something called the curse of knowledge.
Oh, right, right.
When you have been doing something for 20 years, you completely forget what it's like to be a beginner. You use all this jargon, you skip crucial foundational steps because, well, to you, they're just obvious.
That makes total sense. The expert at the top of the mountain can't even see the base camp through the clouds anymore.
Exactly. They are shouting down instructions that make absolutely no sense to the beginner. But the person right above you, they remember the exact frustration.
Because they literally just went through it.
Exactly. They remembered the exact stumbling block and the exact phrase that finally made it click for them yesterday. They can physically reach down and pull you up.
So waiting for absolute mastery is a trap.
A massive trap. I mean, there will always be people in the world who are more advanced than you. And that's fine. You learn from them.
Right.
But you cannot let the existence of people who are further along stop you from helping the people who are a chapter or two behind you. Your lack of a 20-year resume isn't a bug.
It's a feature.
Yes. It is the exact feature that makes you relatable and effective to a beginner.
Okay, so if you're listening to this and you want to start a movement, you have to ask yourself a very practical question. WHO, do you actually want to serve?
And the answer is almost always the person you used to be.
Right, before you became the expert. You just look in the rearview mirror.
Exactly. As a charismatic leader, you are leading people on a path you have already walked. And this brings up the core mechanism of becoming the leader your audience needs, becoming an attractive character.
No, wait. Attractive characters sound, I don't know, it sounds like we're talking about physical looks or having this polished Hollywood-style persona.
Oh, not at all.
No.
In this context, an attractive character is someone who lives the life their audience wishes they could live. But, and this is the crucial functional part, they are also incredibly transparent about their backstory.
Their flaws.
Yes, their flaws and their struggles.
And here's where it gets really interesting to me. Because you would naturally think that to be a leader, you need to project absolute perfection.
Right, the instinct is to protect the armor.
Exactly. You feel like you need to show that you've never made a mistake, that your business never almost went bankrupt, or you never struggled with your health or whatever, that you are just untouchable.
It is the natural instinct, but it's a completely flawed one. If we look at the psychology here, perfection actually alienates people.
Huh. Alienates them how?
Well, if someone looks at you and sees this flawless being who just effortlessly achieved success, they cannot relate to you. They'll look at you and think, well, sure, it works for them because they are special.
They have a faster metabolism or they had a rich family.
Exactly. They have a higher IQ. It won't work for me. The moment they believe your success is due to some innate, flawless trait, they completely disconnect from your message.
So if perfection is the enemy of connection, what's the alternative? Like, how do you maintain your authority while admitting you aren't perfect?
The secret sauce here is the concept of the gap.
The gap. Okay, explain that.
The gap is the distance between where your audience sees themselves right now and where they see you. If you only show them where you are now, the success, the millions of dollars, the perfect relationship, there is no friction.
It's just a flex at that point.
Exactly. It's just bragging. But when you share your vulnerable backstory, when you reveal the internal and external struggles you faced when you are exactly where they are now, you create a psychological bridge.
They see themselves in your past.
Yes. They recognize the pain, the frustration, the exact thoughts they're having today. And then they look at your present, which is the result they desire.
Wow.
So that gap between your past, which is their present, and your present, which is their desired future, is the exact friction that moves them to action.
So it's about showing the whole journey. You have to audit your own story. Like you listening right now, you can't just show the highlight reel on social media. You have to willingly expose the messy middle.
The flawed beginning is critical. Think about Superman, right?
Okay, Superman.
As a character concept, Superman is incredibly boring.
Because he's invincible.
Exactly. Bullets bounce off him, he can fly, heat vision. If nothing can hurt him, there are absolutely no stakes.
Right. No one actually cares about Superman until you introduce kryptonite.
Precisely. He is an uninteresting character until he has weaknesses. The kryptonite grounds him. It gives the audience a reason to worry about him, to root for him. It creates a sense of shared vulnerability.
So if you don't have kryptonite,
If you try to lead people, but present yourself as invincible, you have no kryptonite. And without kryptonite, you have zero relatability.
okay, I want to push back on this just a little bit.
Sure, go for it.
Because I think a lot of people listening might feel a tension here. Let's say I'm hiring a neurosurgeon.
Okay.
I kind of want the Superman without kryptonite. Like, I do not want to hear about my surgeon's messy middle or how they struggled to pass their anatomy exams, Does this gap concept really apply to everything?
Oh, that's a fantastic distinction. And the answer is no. It doesn't apply to pure technical execution where the relationship is purely transactional.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. If you are hiring someone for a highly technical, isolated service, like a surgeon or an airplane pilot, you are paying for flawless execution.
I don't want my pilot getting vulnerable over the intercom.
Exactly. But remember, we are talking about building a mass movement here. We are talking about charismatic leadership.
Yeah.
You're asking people to change their lives, to learn a new skill, to adopt a new philosophy.
Right.
In that arena, they aren't paying for you to do it for them. They are looking for you to guide them through the transformation. And they will not believe they can achieve that transformation unless they know you started out just as confused and flawed as they are.
Okay, that clarifies it perfectly. So for you listening, if you're trying to build a community or teach a skill, think about what your kryptonite was or is. Sharing that isn't a weakness. It is literally your ultimate tool for connection.
It is. But, and here's where we introduce a really necessary counterbalance, that vulnerability is what allows you to build rapport. But rapport alone doesn't make you a leader.
What's missing?
To actually lead, you must maintain absolute certainty.
Absolute certainty. There's this quote I read once, self-confidence is for kids.
It's a bold statement.
It is. It almost sounds arrogant at first glance. Like, what does that even mean?
It sounds arrogant until you understand the underlying mechanism of influence. In any situation, the person with the most certainty wins.
Really? The most certainty wins.
Yes. And it's not about an ego-driven self-confidence where you just think you're better than everyone else.
Yeah.
It's about having an unshakable certainty in your message and in the vehicle for change that you are offering.
Because people are just naturally drawn to certainty, right? Like, let's say you're lost in the woods with a group of people.
Okay, good analogy.
Everyone is panicked. And one person stands up and says, well, I think maybe we should try going north, but I'm not totally sure. I read a book on navigation once, but I could be wrong.
Nobody is following that guy.
Right. But then another person stands up, points confidently, and says, the river is this way. Follow me. Even if that second person is literally just trusting their gut, their certainty is a magnet. You follow the second person.
That is a perfect illustration of the psychology at play. In a world of chaos and information overload, people are desperate for someone who is certain.
Certainty acts as an anchor.
Exactly. But we have to be realistic here. Gaining that certainty takes time. You don't just wake up one day with an unshakable conviction in your message.
Right, so how do you actually build it? Because if you fake it, people smell that a mile away.
Oh, instantly.
So the practical takeaway here is consistency. You have to start publishing your message daily. Podcasts, blogs, social media, whatever platform works for you.
Yes. Daily publishing is the crucible.
By putting your ideas out there every single day, you force yourself to articulate your thoughts. You quickly see what resonates with an audience and what falls totally flat.
You find your voice.
Right. And over time, that repetition, that constant engagement with your own material, it gives you the absolute certainty you need.
And finding your voice through that daily publishing directly leads to the next massive hurdle for most leaders. It's where things get deeply uncomfortable for a lot of people.
Uh-oh. What is it?
You cannot be boring,
Ah.
which really means you must embrace polarity.
Polarities, yes. Okay, think of a magnet again. To have a really strong pull on one side, you inherently have to have a strong push against the opposite side.
Right.
If you are a completely smooth, neutral object, you don't attract anything. If everyone in the world agrees with your message, you probably aren't saying anything meaningful.
The psychological mechanism here is that neutrality is invisible. The human brain filters out neutral information because it doesn't represent a threat, and it doesn't represent an opportunity.
It's just a background noise.
Exactly. Neutrality makes no money, it builds no communities, and it creates zero change. You have to take a stand. When your messages cause polarity, it forces the brain to pay attention.
But there's this concept of the prolific index, right? How do we find that sweet spot of polarity without just becoming a troll?
That's the danger, yeah.
Because there's a huge difference between being a polarizing leader and just being universally hated for saying crazy things on the internet.
Think of the prolific index as a spectrum of ideas. On the far left end, you have the mainstream. This is playing it safe, saying what everyone else is saying, taking absolutely no risks.
Like saying, eat your vegetables and get 8 hours of sleep.
Right. Yeah. It's true, but it's invisible. No one is starting a mass movement based on eat your vegetables.
Sure.
Then, on the far right end, you have absolute crazy land. These are ideas that are completely untethered from reality. Absurd conspiracy theories, things that might get you viral attention, but they cannot sustain a legitimate movement because they lack functional truth.
So where is the sweet spot?
The sweet spot is right in the middle of those two. It's pushing the boundaries of the mainstream enough to be highly innovative and challenging to the status quo without crossing over into absurdity.
Okay, let's invent a hypothetical scenario to test that out. Say you are a productivity coach.
Okay.
The mainstream message is wake up early and use a planner. Boring.
Very boring.
The crazy land message is sleep is a myth. You should only rest in a sensory deprivation tank for 2 hours a week. Right. Totally absurd. So the sweet spot on the prolific index might be something like the traditional 9-to-5 schedule is fundamentally designed to drain your cognitive load and keep you subservient. You need to ignore your boss's timeline, work in intense 4-hour microsprints, and aggressively protect your deep work time, even if it gets you in trouble.
Yes, exactly. Look at what that message does. It takes a recognized problem productivity and burnout, but it offers a polarizing vehicle for solving it. It directly challenges the corporate status quo.
And it forces a reaction.
Exactly. Some people will hear that and say, that's irresponsible, you can't just ignore your boss. But the people who are actually burning out.
They will hear that and say, finally, someone gets it. This is exactly what I need to do.
And when you hit that sweet spot, you are going to upset people. You just are.
It's unavoidable.
And there is a specific ratio to this that I think is incredibly comforting for anyone who's afraid of putting themselves out there.
Oh, the 100-to-1 ratio.
Yes. For every 100 true fans who follow you, love what you do, and buy your products, you will attract one loud person who absolutely hates you.
And psychologically, our brains are hardwired to focus on the negative, so that one hater will feel 10 times louder than the 100 fan.
Always. You could have 99 glowing reviews, and you will lie awake at night staring at the ceiling thinking about that one-star review.
It's so true. So this brings up an unavoidable question for anyone trying to build a movement. Are you willing to be disliked by a few in order to truly serve the many?
You have to become fundamentally okay with the haters. If you aren't polarizing your message enough to attract a hater, you aren't polarizing it enough to reach the true fans who desperately need the change you're offering.
Upsetting a few people isn't a sign that you are failing.
No, it is a metric of success. It means you are successfully building a boundary around your tribe and taking a definitive stand.
It's the ultimate filter. Your message is a beacon. It's meant to attract your people, but it is equally meant to actively repel the people who aren't a good fit.
If you try to be palatable to everyone, you end up being deeply important to no one.
Man, that is powerful. Okay, so let's assume you have established this foundation. You have your relatable backstory, your gap. You have absolute certainty in your vehicle, and you are willing to be polarizing.
You have the stage.
Exactly, of the stage. But how do you actually communicate? What are the specific psychological levers you pull to make people want to drop everything and follow you into this new opportunity?
This brings us to mastering persuasion.
Okay, let's dive into this because this is where the mechanics get incredibly deep and honestly, a little dark if you look at how powerful they are.
They are very powerful.
There is a concept from a persuasion expert named Blair Warren from his book, The One-Sentence Persuasion Course. He distills the entire foundation of human persuasion into a single sentence. I'm going to read it because every single word in the sentence is a loaded psychological trigger.
Go for it.
People will do anything for those who encourage their dreams, justify their failures, allay their fears, confirm their suspicions, and help them throw rocks at their enemies.
I mean, that is an absolute masterclass in human psychology, packed into a few dozen words.
It really is.
If we want to understand how a charismatic leader actually operates, we need to dissect these 5 triggers individually. They form the operational playbook for influence.
Let's do it. Trigger number 1, encourage their dreams. On the surface, this feels almost too simple, like, hey, go get them. But the mechanism underneath is profound, isn't it?
It is. It starts with understanding the cultural conditioning we all go through. As a leader, you must first deeply understand what your audience actually dreams of, and then validate those dreams within the new opportunity you are offering.
Validate them.
Blair Warren points out a fascinating, almost tragic dynamic here. Parents, teachers, society at large, they often actively discourage big dreams for our own good.
Right, they try to steer us toward reasonable or safe goals to protect us from disappointment.
Don't be a musician, be an accountant. It's safer.
Don't start a business. Get a stable job with benefits. We are constantly told to shrink our ambitions.
And over time, people accept this suppression. They internalize it. They literally bury their actual dreams under layers of pragmatism.
It's sad, really.
But then a stranger comes along, a charismatic leader who looks at them and says, actually, your dream isn't crazy. You can do this. Here is the path.
And Warren asks a vital question about this, right?
Yes. When this happens, who has more power and influence over that person? The parents in society who told them to play it safe, or the stranger who gave them permission to dream big?
The stranger, 100%. It is intoxicating when someone finally looks at you and validates the thing you've been secretly wanting to do your whole life.
It builds instant, massive loyalty.
Okay, which leads us to the second trigger. And this one is arguably the most counterintuitive and where I think we really need to dig into the mechanics. Trigger number 2, justify their failures.
This is a big one.
This one stopped me in my tracks because culturally, especially in the personal development and business worlds, we are constantly told the exact opposite.
Right, the extreme ownership culture.
Exactly. We're told to take extreme ownership. We celebrate people who say, everything is my fault, no excuses. Think about daytime television. Millions of people cheer when a TV psychologist tells guests to stop playing the victim and take responsibility for their terrible choices.
That is the mainstream narrative, yes. But let's look at the shadow side of that dynamic. While millions cheer that take responsibility mantra from the comfort of their couches, millions more are secretly, desperately looking for someone to take the weight of responsibility off their shoulders.
Wow, really?
Yes, think about it. When someone has tried to lose weight 10 times and failed, or tried to start a business 3 times and gone into debt, the shame is paralyzing.
Oh, the shame. Yeah.
If they believe they are fundamentally broken or lazy, if they accept that the failure is tied to their core identity, they will never try again.
But let me push on that a bit. If a leader just comes in and says, hey, it's not your fault, you're perfect, isn't that just enabling bad behavior? Like, how does justifying their failure actually help them succeed?
That's the nuance. The key is how you justify the failure. You do not tell them that action isn't required. You separate their identity from the vehicle they were using.
A vehicle. Okay, explain that.
Most people who come to you seeking change have tried to change before and they failed. Your job as a leader is to say, it's not your fault you didn't succeed. The old system was rigged against you.
You aren't lazy. The old diet was based on flawed metabolic science.
Exactly. You aren't a bad entrepreneur. The old business model you were taught is completely outdated.
Ah, I see. You take the blame off their identity and place it onto the vehicle they were using.
Yes. By justifying their past failures through the lens of a broken system or a flawed vehicle, you remove the shame. And shame is the biggest barrier to action.
Once the shame is gone, they can move forward.
Once it's gone, they are suddenly open to trying your new vehicle. You aren't enabling them to sit on the couch. You are clearing the emotional baggage so they can confidently step into the new opportunity you're providing.
Wow. It's about removing the shame so they can take action again. That is incredibly powerful. Okay, trigger number 3, Allay their fears. To allay means to diminish or put to rest.
Fear is paralyzing. When we're afraid, our cognitive bandwidth narrows. We can't concentrate on a new opportunity, we can't learn, we can't take risks.
And the most common and most ineffective response to fear is simply telling someone, hey, don't be afraid, you've got this.
Which has literally never worked in the history of human communication.
Never. Telling an anxious person to just calm down usually makes them furious.
Exactly. True leaders understand that you cannot just dictate emotions. You can't just tell people how to feel. You have to work with them until the fear naturally subsides.
How do you do that?
You do this by presenting evidence. You offer support. You tell stories of others who faced the exact same fear and overcame it. You don't dismiss the fear as irrational, you acknowledge it, and then you actively dismantle it with proof and a clear plan.
It's the difference between a CEO standing up during a massive economic downturn and saying, hey guys, don't worry about the economy, just stay positive.
Which causes panic.
Right. Versus a CEO saying, I know you are worried about the economy. It is scary right now, but here is our exact financial roadmap, here is our cash reserve, and here's exactly how our company is going to navigate this recession step by step.
Evidence over platitudes.
Perfectly stated. When you put their fears to rest and replace them with a concrete plan, you earn an immense amount of trust. Which brings us to the fourth trigger, which taps into a very deep, almost primal desire we all have. Confirm their suspicions.
Knew it.
There is no feeling quite like having a suspicion confirmed.
It's deeply psychologically satisfying. When we suspect something is true, especially if it goes against the grain, we feel a bit isolated.
Like we're the only ones seeing it.
Right. And when someone else, especially an authority figure, confirms what we suspect, we feel a massive surge of validation. We feel smart.
We feel like we're finally seeing behind the curtain.
Yes. And we are instantly attracted to the person who helped us feel that way.
Now, the mechanics of this are so powerful that they can be used for incredible good or catastrophic manipulation. We have to look at this neutrally as a tool of human psychology.
Because it's a double-edged sword.
Exactly. This mechanism, confirming a deeply held suspicion, is exactly how cults operate. They confirm the suspicions of prospective members by telling them that society is corrupted or that their families are secretly holding them back.
It's exactly how catastrophic historical movements have gained traction, too. By confirming the darkest suspicions of a populace about who is to blame for their troubles.
Right, so keeping this politically neutral, it is a neutral tool of influence. Much like a hammer can build a house or tear one down.
The psychological mechanism is simply that humans crave validation of their internal narratives. In the context of building a positive business or movement, your audience is likely suspicious of the industry norms.
Let's use the fitness industry as an example.
Okay. Your audience probably suspects that the supplement industry is lying to them about what it takes to get in shape.
So if you stand up and say, you know what, you've always suspected that these magazines are pushing useless pills just to make a profit, and you were right. I was on the inside and I saw it firsthand. Here is the actual truth about nutrition.
Boom. You bond those people to you instantly.
You become their ally in a world they already mistrusted, which naturally bleeds into the final and perhaps most polarizing of the 5 triggers. Help them throw rocks at their enemies.
This is the creation of the US versus them dynamic.
It sounds aggressive.
It does sound aggressive, but it is an undeniable foundational truth of human sociology. Nothing bonds a group of people together quite like a common enemy.
Everyone you meet is engaged in a great struggle, right? Everyone is fighting something.
And that enemy doesn't have to be a specific person. In fact, it rarely is. The enemy can be a group, an illness, a systemic setback, a rival philosophy, or a status quo.
The psychological mechanism is that when someone is struggling against an enemy, they feel alone. They are looking for allies.
Yes. When you stand up and say, I see your enemy, I know what they are doing to you, and I am fighting them too, you don't just become friends with your audience. You become partners in a crusade.
Let's give a concrete example of this. Think about how massive tech brands or online movements are built. It's rarely just about having a slightly better software feature.
No, it's about defining who they are fighting against.
Exactly. They literally define the enemy. They point at the big, slow, bureaucratic legacy brands, the venture capitalists who want to control everything, the traditional corporate gatekeepers who say what you are doing is impossible.
And by doing that, they build a multi-million-dollar movement, not just by saying our software is good, but by saying, we are the underground rebels fighting the corporate empire.
That is the textbook application of throwing rocks at a common enemy. It clarifies the boundary of the community. It tells people exactly what you stand for by making it painstakingly clear what you stand against.
When you draw that line in the sand, the people on your side feel a profound sense of belonging.
So for you listening right now, you need to audit your communication. Look at your marketing, the way you lead your team, or the way you build your community. Are you hitting these 5 triggers?
Are you actively encouraging their dreams?
Are you removing their shame by justifying their past failures?
Are you dismantling their fears with evidence?
Are you confirming their suspicions about the industry?
And are you defining a common enemy to throw rocks at?
Because if you are just listing the features of your product, you are leaving massive influence on the table.
But, and we really need to pause here, we have to address the elephant in the room regarding persuasion theory.
The manipulation aspect.
Yes. If you use these 5 triggers purely as a mechanical formula for manipulation, if you are just pulling levers to extract money from people without actually caring about their outcome, your movement will inevitably collapse.
The system requires genuine care to function long term.
They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
It's an old cliche, but it's a cliche because it's true.
If your audience senses that you are just using psychological triggers to manipulate them, the trust breaks. And once trust breaks, the movement shatters.
True charismatic leaders genuinely care about the people they are serving.
And this goes back to what we said earlier. If you choose your ideal clients correctly, if you are serving the person you used to be, you should feel a deep intrinsic desire to see them succeed.
Because it's you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You should want to help them even if you weren't getting paid, simply because you know how much the struggle hurts.
It's the ultimate safeguard against becoming a cult leader or a scam artist. If your intent is truly to elevate your audience, these tools of persuasion aren't manipulative. They are just efficient vehicles to help your audience achieve the change they actually want.
And that leads to the final piece of this framework. You must offer your audience value from their relationship with you. But, and this is a critical distinction where so many leaders fail, you must provide value as they define it, not as you define it.
What does that actually look like in practice? Because it's so easy to project what we want onto our audience. I might think, I'm going to teach them how to make $1 million, but maybe that's not what they want.
It's a very common trap for highly driven leaders.
Yeah.
Imagine a mastermind group or a coaching program. As the leader, you are probably hyper-focused on metrics.
Right. ROI, growth.
You assume everyone joined your group to get an immediate massive return on investment. If you assume they want to scale their business to the moon or lose 50 pounds in a month. So you push that definition of success on everyone.
You aggressively hold them accountable to your standard.
But what if that's not why they are there?
Oh, wow. What if they join just because they love learning?
What if they joined because they are lonely as a solo entrepreneur and desperately just want community and belonging?
What if they join just for the status of being associated with you?
Exactly. If you force your definition of success onto them, let's say berating them for not doubling their revenue this quarter, when all they really wanted was to feel like they belonged to a tribe of like-minded people, you will alienate them.
You will make them feel like failures in the exact space where they came to feel safe.
You have to deeply listen to your followers. Allow them to extract the specific type of value they are seeking from the relationship. Stop forcing your goals onto them.
If they get immense value just from being in the room, listening to the conversations, and feeling a sense of belonging, validate that. Provide the environment they need.
Exactly.
Man, this has been an incredibly dense, fascinating journey into human psychology today. We started with the realization that you don't need to be the master, you just need to be the guide who is one chapter ahead.
We dismantled the need for perfection and explored how the gap and your kryptonite actually create connection.
We pushed into the necessity of having absolute certainty in your vehicle, and why finding the sweet spot of polarity on the prolific index is the only way to avoid being invisible.
And we went deep into the psychology of the 5 persuasion triggers dreams, failures, fears, suspicions, and enemies.
And we anchored all of it in the necessity of genuine care and redefining value based on what the audience actually wants.
When you synthesize all of these mechanisms, one clear, unifying insight really emerges from all of this. Charisma is not a genetic gift. It is structured empathy.
Structured empathy. I love that.
It is the willingness to be intensely vulnerable about where you came from, to be absolutely certain about where you were going, and to be deeply attuned to the raw psychological needs of the people you are attempting to lead.
Structured empathy. That is the perfect way to frame it. So let's say you've done the work. You listening, you've audited your story, you've embraced your flaws, you've found your polarizing voice, and you've built yourself into the charismatic leader that your audience desperately wants to follow.
You have their attention, you have their trust, and they are ready to move.
But a leader without a destination is just wandering. You have the vehicle, but where are you driving it? The question you have to answer next is, how do you build the future-based cause? The vision so compelling that your audience will drop everything to follow you into the unknown.
That is where the movement truly begins, and it requires an entirely different set of architectural tools. So keep analyzing the leaders around you, keep looking for the gap in their stories, and keep digging deep into the psychology of why you follow who you follow.
What you just listened was the beginning of a full audio, way longer, explaining every single chapter of the book. If you would like to keep listening to the end and access to the full audio, you can access it with the link down below in the description and in the pinned comment.